The hospital has no choice but to report you to the police. If you don't want that, leave immediately, and I'll let this slide. Falsely accused of a crime I didn't commit, I was effectively fired by the hospital director. All because I confronted his son, my colleague, about his misconduct. Getting fired, how pathetic. But that's what happens when you stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Let this be a lesson for you. Know your place from now on, you worthless nobody. That's what his son said to me as I left the hospital. Little did anyone know, this event would trigger a major incident that would shake the hospital to its core. My name is Ryan James, and I'm a surgeon working at a university hospital. I've been a doctor for about 10 years, and I have an ability to never forget the condition of a patient once I've seen it during surgery, allowing me to notice even the slightest changes. Because of that, I've never caused any complications, and my success rate is said to be the highest in the hospital's history. But not everyone around me appreciated my presence. Shawn Adams, a fellow surgeon, was one of them. He's the same age as me, skilled, and quite popular with both staff and patients. But not many people know his true nature. "Ryan, could you cover my afternoon shift?" As I was packing up to head home after my morning rounds, he suddenly asked me this. Switching at the last minute would confuse his patients. Curious if he had something urgent, I asked for a reason, but he frowned. "Does it really matter why?" "Just cover for me, okay?" "Wait, hold on a second." Before I could get an explanation, Shawn left for home without saying anything further. I had no choice but to tell his patients, Dr. Adams suddenly fell ill. And I was overwhelmed with guilt. A few hours later, I noticed a nurse coming in for the evening shift, dressed more stylishly than usual. Other nurses immediately gathered around her, curious about what was going on. "Actually, I had lunch with Shawn today, so..." The nurses nodded in understanding. I was left speechless. So, Shawn had skipped his afternoon shift for a lunch date with her. The next day, I confronted him about the inconvenience caused to his patients and the lunch incident. He looked annoyed but admitted it without hesitation. Building relationships with the nurses is important, but you need to put your patients first. Enough. Are you seriously lecturing me? Did you forget I'm the director's son? Yes, he was the hospital director's only son. But so what? He wasn't the director himself, and that didn't give him the right to neglect his patients. I understand that, but that's exactly why you should be more dedicated to your patients than anyone else. You're not the director, so don't act so high and mighty. I'm simply saying what's expected of any doctor. This is such a hassle. Mumbling to himself, Shawn walked out of the room before I could finish. Later that day, I was summoned to the director's office. Dr. Adams shoved a pile of documents at me. "We found evidence that you've been embezzling money from the hospital." The accusation left me in shock. Of course, I had never done anything like that, and I had no idea there was even an embezzlement issue. This has to be some kind of mistake. I have no memory of doing anything like that. Don't play dumb. We have all the evidence we need. I've heard you've been dissatisfied with the hospital's policies. So we conducted a thorough investigation. Dissatisfied? I've never. You questioned the future director, Shawn, didn't you? It finally made sense. Shawn had gone to his father to get rid of me. It's unfortunate, but the hospital has no choice but to report you to the police. If you don't want that, leave immediately. And I'll let this slide. He claimed he'd let it slide, but I knew better. If the police investigated and discovered the fabricated evidence, It would cause more trouble for him. This was his way of quietly forcing me out under the guise of mercy. I wouldn't mind getting the police involved, but it would cause problems for the patients. More importantly, even if I manage to get through this, something similar will likely happen again. It's better to sever ties completely. With that in mind, I decided to resign from the hospital. As I walked out of the director's office, Shawn was standing there. He smiled smugly and patted me on the shoulder. Getting fired, how pathetic. But that's what happens when you try to interfere with me. Take this as a lesson to know your place from now on. You worthless nobody. Is there really such a thing as status for a doctor whose mission is to help the sick? There's no point in trying to explain a doctor's duty to someone like him, who's already learned how to wield power. I gave up on talking to him and began preparing to hand over my patients. A few days later, I left the hospital, with many of the other doctors and nurses expressing their regret. But I was left questioning what it really meant to be a doctor. In the end, is it all about money and power? Are there other doctors out there who see their patients as nothing more than tools for making money? How do people like that end up in positions of power? Or maybe it's because they gained power that they became dependent on it. What should I do from here? What if I find myself in another hospital with people like Shawn and Dr. Adams? The thought of that made me not want to think about the future. But I couldn't keep going like this. To clear my head, I decided to take a trip. I visited a remote village in the mountains, famous for its waterfall, which was a popular tourist spot. The tourist season had already passed, so there weren't many people around, and the parking lot had plenty of open spaces. I parked my car at the visitor center and went inside to grab some brochures and a map of the area. The building was clean, well-maintained, and comfortably air-conditioned, perfect for a quick break. As I browsed the pamphlets, a woman approached me. "Where are you headed today?" Her friendly smile was so natural that for a moment, I thought she might be an actress I didn't recognize. I wondered if there was a film crew nearby, but then I noticed the name tag hanging from her chest, City Planning Committee, Harris. It seemed she was a staff member here. "Oh, I was thinking of seeing the waterfall and the cave." "I see. Are you driving?" "Yes, I am." "In that case, if you take this route, there's a free parking lot you can use." It had been a while since I'd spoken with a woman outside of my patients and the nurses, and I found myself oddly nervous. It was probably because she was so beautiful. Anyone who came to this visitor center would surely be surprised by her presence. After getting directions, I set off to see the waterfall. Luckily, there was no one else around, and the cool breeze and mist from the waterfall gave me a much-needed sense of calm and refreshment. Before heading to my lodging, I decided to stop by the visitor center again to thank her. Maybe I just wanted someone to share how beautiful the place was with. I parked in the same spot and went inside. But the atmosphere inside had completely changed from just a few hours earlier. "Sarah, what happened? She might be having a panic attack. Someone get a plastic bag." It seemed like someone had fallen ill. I couldn't help but move closer, my instincts as a doctor kicking in. "Excuse me, is everything okay? What happened? Who are you?" "I'm just a tourist, but I'm a licensed physician." "What? Then please, come quickly." My words caused those around me to push me toward the center of the commotion. The person struggling to breathe was none other than the woman with the beautiful smile. She had suddenly collapsed, writhing in pain. I checked her pulse, noting that she was unable to speak. "We need to act quickly. This could be dangerous. Is there a hospital nearby?" There's a clinic. That'll do. I'll take her there. Please call the clinic and inform them. Also, if anyone witnessed what happened, I'd appreciate it if they could come with us. Handling emergencies was part of my daily routine, so even after all this time, I remained calm. As I drove, I learned that she had a chronic condition, which was why she lived in this quiet, clean air village, avoiding more urban areas. We arrived at the clinic, with a sign that read Miller Clinic, and I spoke with Dr. Miller, the director. Together, we immediately began treating her. Fortunately, the clinic was well equipped for a small facility, and her condition soon stabilized. I must say, I'm impressed by your quick thinking and prompt action. You mentioned you're a licensed doctor, but where are you practicing now? The older doctor, his hair graying, gave me a warm smile. After I explained that I had recently left my position, Dr. Miller looked at me closely. Wait a minute. Aren't you Ryan? Do you know me? Of course. I've attended conferences where you've spoken, and I've read your papers. I never imagined I'd meet someone so well known like you. I'm flattered. I bowed my head, but then Dr. Miller asked if I had a family. When I told him I was unmarried, he made an unexpected offer. He invited me to work at the clinic. I could hardly contain my excitement. I had always thought about working at a clinic rather than a large hospital someday. And the opportunity to work in such a beautiful place would be more than I could have ever hoped for. I quickly accepted his offer, and Dr. Miller promised to arrange a place for me to live. Just then, the door to the clinic burst open. Dr. Miller. How's Sarah? Anthony. She's fine now, thanks to this young man who happened to be here. Dr. Miller introduced me to the man. He was Sarah's father, Anthony Harris, the village mayor. I can't thank you enough for saving my daughter. I'm just glad I was there at the right time. Anthony shook my hand firmly and began telling me about his daughter, Sarah. She had been suffering from a serious illness since childhood, and unfortunately, there was still no cure. The only thing that could be done was to manage her symptoms. Since large hospitals hadn't been able to help, the family decided she should at least live in a stress-free environment, which was why she had returned to the village where she was born and raised. The clinic's advanced equipment had been purchased by Anthony specifically for Sarah's care, to ensure they could act swiftly if needed. I was touched by how much she was loved. I checked in with Sarah, asking if she still felt unwell, and decided it would be best for her to stay at the clinic overnight for observation. Thank you so much for everything, Anthony said again. No, I should be the one thanking you. The waterfall was beautiful. It really helped me find some peace. I'm glad to hear that. Sarah, have you considered undergoing tests at a larger hospital? Your father mentioned that your last major examination was 5 years ago. There's a chance your condition may have worsened, and there might be newer treatments available now that could help. No, I'm fine. Sarah responded weakly, shaking her head. I don't want my father to spend any more money on me. If this illness can't be cured, there's no point in extending my life and becoming a burden to him. Please don't say that. Your father wants you to live. But it's painful knowing I can't live much longer. How is that fair to anyone? Sarah, even if your time is short, I believe you deserve to be happy. That's why we all want you to live as long as possible. Happiness. That's something I'll never have. There's no rule that says you can't be happy just because you're sick. You should live, even if just one more day, to see beautiful things, eat delicious food, and experience moments that move your heart. That's what your father and everyone else wants for you. You should live to find that happiness." A silence settled between us. Not wanting to push her too hard, I quickly added, "I'm sorry if I came off as pushy." "No. It's just, no one has ever told me I should live. I always felt like people were avoiding saying something as direct as live. Some people might feel it's bad luck to say it out loud. But as a doctor, I can say it, I want you to live. I'll do everything I can to help make that happen." "Thank you." Sarah smiled at me. It was a different smile from the first time we met, still tinged with sadness. But it didn't feel hopeless. After that, I began researching Sarah's illness. It was a rare disease that I had only heard of in passing, and due to its rarity, there hadn't been much exploration into effective treatments. I found a few cases from overseas, but the information was scarce, making it a challenging task. After settling into the village, I spent my days off contacting fellow doctors and mentors, gathering any information I could. By giving her medication that helped ease her symptoms and increasing her checkups, we were able to prevent her from having any more sudden attacks. She used to struggle with shortness of breath every 2 to 3 months, but the frequency had noticeably decreased. As a thank you for my help, Sarah began showing me around to scenic spots that were either popular tourist attractions or known only to locals. As expected from someone who worked at the visitor center, her explanations were clear and engaging. "It's been so long since I've gone out like this and enjoyed myself without pushing my limits. I'm really grateful to you, Dr. James. See? There are good things about being alive, aren't there?" "Yes, truly." As I gazed out at the distant sea from the observation deck, I suddenly felt a pair of eyes on me. Sarah was looking at me. "Is something wrong?" "Ha! Oh, no, it's nothing." Sarah blushed and looked away. I touched my face, wondering if something was on it, but couldn't figure it out. Her illness hadn't been cured, but as her heart grew stronger, her smiles became even brighter. She laughed easily, and the village elders, already fond of her, showered her with even more affection. Mayor Anthony often told me, "It's all thanks to Dr. James," which made me proud as a doctor. After all, seeing a patient's health improve is the greatest reward for us. However, lately, whenever I looked at Sarah, I felt a growing tightness in my chest. At first, I admired her beauty and grace from a distance, but the more time we spent together, the more those feelings began to shift into something deeper, romantic feelings. I wondered how she saw me. At the very least, I didn't think she disliked me. In fact, there were times I caught her looking at me. It could be wishful thinking, but maybe she felt the same. I decided that when I dropped Sarah off at her house after her hospital visit, I would confess my feelings. The atmosphere in the car was tense, and I wasn't sure if it was because she could sense my nerves. "By the way, didn't your father mention something about you needing to come home early today? Is there something going on?" I started with small talk, but Sarah's expression darkened instantly. "There's a visitor coming today." "I see." It seemed like someone she didn't want to meet. She let out a heavy sigh. When we arrived at her house and stepped out of the car, I finally gathered the courage to speak. Before I leave, there's something I need to tell you." But before I could finish, Sarah interrupted me. "There's something I need to tell you, too. Dr. James, please forget about me." "What?" Her sudden words stopped me in my tracks. "Forget about you." What do you mean? Are you saying, don't worry, I haven't given up on living, but soon we won't be able to see each other anymore? I didn't understand what she meant. Was she moving far away? If so, I should be celebrating her new journey. But I couldn't understand why she told me to forget her. I see. But I can't forget you. To me, you're someone very special. Excuse me, but could you stop flirting with my fiancé? A voice interrupted from behind, and I turned around. Both I and the speaker were equally shocked to see each other. Wait, Ryan? Shawn? Anne? Dr. Adams? Standing there were the very people who had forced me out of my last job, the father and son duo from the hospital. What are you doing here? I should be asking you the same. To think it's you who's been making advances on Sarah. There was that word, fiancé. Could it be? Sarah is my fiancé. Now that you know, why don't you make yourself scarce? Sarah, engaged to Shawn. The shock of hearing those words hit me so hard that I couldn't muster a response. With no other option, I left just as he demanded. The next day, Shawn deliberately came by, during my work hours. So, this is where you've ended up? Working at this rundown clinic. How far you've fallen. I wanted to say, whose fault do you think that is? But more than that, I was furious at how he mocked the clinic. This clinic is an important place for the people of this village. Is that so? Well, it won't be around much longer, maybe a year at most. What do you mean by that? Shawn smirked as he replied. Once I marry Sarah, I'll own most of the land in this village, since I'll be the son-in-law of the mayor. I'm planning to build a large resort hotel here. These old, run-down buildings will be demolished in no time. What? And by the way, were you really thinking of making a move on Sarah yesterday? Do you honestly believe you're good enough for her? His words made me recall something. I didn't know how long Sarah had been his fiancée, but back when I worked at the hospital, Shawn frequently went on dates with other women. What was that all about, then? Shawn, weren't you often seen with multiple women before? Oh, that? Yeah, I still have plenty of women back home. I couldn't believe how proudly he was saying this. You have other women? What about Sarah? You're supposed to be marrying her. Sarah? She's just a rural girl. I'm only marrying her for the land rights. From what I've heard, she's pretty sick anyway. Which works out perfectly for me. I nearly lost control and lunged at him out of anger. But I restrained myself. If I hit him now, I'd only cause trouble for Dr. Miller, who had been looking out for me. And I'd lose the trust of the villagers. You might want to start looking for another job while you still can. It seems anyone who gets involved with me ends up in trouble. With a smug laugh, he walked away, and all I could do was watch, gritting my teeth in frustration. Ever since Shawn came to our house to discuss the engagement arrangements, I haven't seen Dr. James. Even when I visit the clinic or walk around the village, it's as if he's disappeared, like he was never really here in the first place. Dr. Miller told me he's taking a few days off, so I'm hoping he'll return soon, but I can't help but worry. What if he doesn't come back at all? I know I'm the cause of all this. Even though I was engaged to Shawn, I acted in ways that made Dr. James think I had feelings for him. And when he was about to tell me how he felt, I told him to forget me. What if he's grown tired of me and left the village for good? What if he never wants to see my face again? When I was introduced to Shawn, I didn't care who I married because I thought I wouldn't live much longer anyway. His family is wealthy, so I was sure they could help my father. If it meant my father could live more comfortably, even though I'm the one suffering from an illness. That's why I agreed to the engagement so easily. I knew Shawn didn't care about me as a person, he just wanted the status of marrying the mayor's daughter. But that didn't bother me. I lost my mother early on, and my father raised me alone. If this could be a way to repay him, I didn't care about my own feelings or clinging to life. But then I met Dr. James, and I began to wonder, maybe I could be happy too. A few days ago, I gathered the courage to ask my father, "Is it okay for me to be happy?" He held me close and said, "Your happiness is what matters most to me. It's also what your mother would have wanted." That's when I realized if I want to find happiness in the little time I have, it's with Dr. James. He gave me hope, taught me what it meant to truly care for others. He's a kind man, always taking every patient's worries as seriously as his own. How wonderful it would be to live by his side. But now it's too late, the engagement can't be undone. And I've hurt him deeply. Seeing me will only cause him pain now. So, I'll smile and accept this marriage, for my father's sake, at the very least. That's the only thing left I can do. The engagement ceremony is being held at a fancy restaurant. Everything is prepared, and the two families sit facing each other. I can see the beautiful engagement gifts on display, but they hold no appeal to me. This whole ceremony is nothing but agony for me. Shawn's father gives a speech, and I listen absent-mindedly. There's some commotion outside. I glance toward the entrance, and others follow my gaze. Just then, the sliding door flies open with a loud bang. Standing there, disheveled and in dirty clothes, was Dr. James. "Dr. James, do you even know where you are?" Shawn and his father both stood up, shouting insults at him, calling him rude and demanding he leave. The restaurant staff rushed over, trying to escort him out. My father and I could only watch in stunned silence. "I found it. A treatment for Sarah," Dr. James shouted. "What?" "There's a doctor in Germany who successfully treated a patient with the same condition just last month. A treatment that was never available before." That can't be. So, I went to meet that doctor and talk to them. Did Dr. James really go to Germany? For me? We can treat this. Sarah, what do you want to do? I stood up and shouted back at him. I want to be treated. Ryan, what are you talking about? Shawn's grip tightened on my arm. Just because there's a success case in Germany doesn't mean anything. Are you going to take her there? The cost would be astronomical. No, I'll do it. As soon as I said that, Shawn and his father burst into mocking laughter. You? Just because you heard about it? Impossible. Don't make such ridiculous claims. Don't get ahead of yourself. What could a small-town doctor possibly achieve? Don't tell me you still believe that nonsense about being a genius surgeon back at the hospital? There was a time when my high surgical success rate earned me the nickname of genius surgeon at the hospital. I had never let the nickname genius surgeon get to my head. I'm not arrogant. I made my decision based on my skills and experience. I trust my own abilities. Now all that matters is whether Sarah and Anthony trust me. I trust you, Anthony said firmly. And Sarah? What about you? Of course, I trust you. Dr. James, I'm counting on you. The patient has spoken. You have no right to stop this. Leaving behind a bitter-looking Shawn and his father, I returned to the clinic and began planning the surgery with Dr. Miller. On the day of the surgery, as we were preparing, Sarah spoke to me. Dr. James, I'm sorry. I did something terrible to you. Something terrible? I didn't tell you about my fiancé. Oh, that. It's fine. Remember what I said? I just want you to be happy. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. You've given me a reason to believe in being a doctor again, Sarah. You reminded me of the importance of saving patients. For that, you're my benefactor. If the surgery is successful, I think I'll be able to live longer. But, I'll tell you after the surgery. All right. I'll make sure the surgery is a success, so you can tell me the rest later. After 6 hours, the surgery was a success. As Sarah and Anthony hugged, tears of joy streaming down their faces, I approached them. We're not entirely out of the woods yet, but with continued treatment, you won't need to worry about the illness anymore. Dr. James, thank you. Thank you so much. Anthony said, just like the first time we met, shaking my hand with deep gratitude. Dr. Miller and I exchanged glances, silently acknowledging our success. The next day, while Sarah was recovering in her hospital room, Shawn and his father came to visit. The surgery was a success, I hear. Congratulations, Shawn said. Thank you, Shawn, Sarah replied. Do you think you'll still make it to the engagement ceremony, even though it's been delayed by 2 weeks? At this, Sarah shook her head. No, I won't be marrying Shawn. What? I want to live my life with Dr. James, who saved both my body and my heart. Sarah looked directly at me as she said this. Was she really choosing me? Oh, come on, what are you talking about? You're just tired after the surgery, Shawn said with a forced smile. But Sarah spoke firmly. No, I'm fully aware of what I'm saying. Anthony, your daughter is saying something ridiculous. You need to talk some sense into her. Shawn's father urged Anthony, but Anthony nodded and responded calmly. Shawn, I'm sorry, but we need to cancel this engagement. What? What are you talking about? Last night, I talked to Sarah. I realized her happiness lies with someone who truly values her. And you're saying my son doesn't value her? I know he's only interested in the family's wealth. That's why we'll also be canceling the donation to your hospital. Instead, we'll be using it to renovate this clinic. What are you talking about? It's all out in the open now. I think it's best for both families. I stepped forward, facing Shawn and his father directly. The embezzlement evidence you showed me back at the hospital? It was fabricated, wasn't it? In reality, it's proof that you both were involved in embezzlement. And without anyone around to speak up after I was gone, you continued. I've also heard that 6 months ago, Shawn pinned a major medical error he made on another doctor. On what basis are you making these accusations? With the network Dr. Miller and I have, gathering this information wasn't difficult. Outside the hospital room, I could see Dr. Miller nodding in agreement. We're gathering evidence from the doctors and patients who were affected. I'm sure a lawsuit is coming soon. And it's unlikely you'll be able to settle this privately. Hey, don't just make things up. Shawn grabbed me by the collar, but I twisted his wrist back in response. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Who's the one acting recklessly here? You turned the hospital into your personal playground, thinking only of your own gain. A hospital isn't meant for that. Who do you think you are, talking down to me like that? Who do you think you are? Acting like a king just because you're the director's son. Anyway, you two should hurry back to the hospital and start looking for a lawyer. You'll need one soon enough. Shawn and his father exchanged glances before hurriedly leaving the clinic. Dr. Miller and Anthony, sensing it was time, also stepped out of the room. Sarah and I were left alone, looking at each other. "Sarah, are you really sure about this?" "About me? I don't want anyone but you, Dr. James." "And is it really okay for you? Do you want to be with me?" "I don't want anyone but you, Sarah." We both smiled at each other. I apologized for going to Germany without telling her, and she apologized again for keeping her engagement a secret. Then, we talked about our future together. The way Sarah's eyes lit up when she spoke about what was ahead, it made her look even more beautiful. 2 weeks later, even more evidence of the Addams family's wrongdoing surfaced. There was no way they could win the trial, and they were expelled from the hospital. I heard that they were hit with numerous claims for damages and compensation, eventually leading them to declare bankruptcy and lose their home. It's said that finding another job in the medical field is nearly impossible for them now, and they've lost everything, left wandering with nowhere to go. Apparently, there wasn't a single person willing to help them. Their past actions had finally caught up with them. A year later, thanks to a donation from Anthony, Miller Clinic underwent a major renovation. In a few years, it grew into a fully equipped hospital with more staff and advanced medical technology. After Dr. Miller retired, I took over as the director. The hospital has since become well known, not just as a tourist destination but as a place where people can receive high-level medical care. By that time, Sarah and I had gotten married. With her illness cured, Sarah now works part-time at the visitor center during the day and helps with administrative work at the hospital in the evenings. I keep reminding her not to overwork herself, but she's so excited to be able to move freely again that she can't help it. Seeing her so full of life motivates me to work even harder. I believe that being a doctor means helping patients carve out a future and giving them hope. No matter how dire the situation may seem, as long as you don't give up, dreams can come true. To make as many of those dreams come true as possible, I constantly encourage the hospital staff to stay humble and always put the patients first. I firmly believe that this mindset is essential for everyone's happiness. They said there was no place for a high school graduate like me, and kicked me out of the restaurant. The moment the new female employee, who had been standing frozen in front of the shop, smiled with tears welling up in her eyes. My anger reached its peak. The elite employees who always looked down on us for our education levels had volunteered to organize this gathering. But it turned out to be a trap set by one of them. A scheme to humiliate us, to make us a laughingstock. "Ashley, stay here." "Ha!" Fueled by my rage, I stormed into the venue, where the party was being held. Soon after, someone arrived, revealing my true identity. And the elite employees were struck by a shock so severe it sobered them instantly. My name is Daniel Walker, 32 years old. I work in sales at a small IT startup company. The company I work for was founded just 7 years ago, still a young company. In the early days, there was hardly any business, and even the president and programmers had to go out and drum up our business. And it was a tough time for the company. But everything changed 4 years ago. It all started when Mr. Walker was interviewed on TV by chance. I grew up poor as a child. I created this budget support app hoping that kids in the same situation might at least be able to eat a full meal once a week. The sight of Mr. Walker sharing his story struck a chord with viewers. But what garnered the most attention was not just his background, but also how young and good-looking he was. The news spread quickly on social media, and soon other TV stations and magazines were requesting interviews. As a result, our company's recognition skyrocketed. Today, we're a fast-growing business, often listed as one of the top up-and-coming companies, poised to become a major player. So, you graduated from K University, huh? That's a prestigious school. I heard a lot of alumni work here. I wanted to challenge myself, too. Hearing the enthusiasm of this promising new employee, I smiled and nodded, saying, "Do your best." Even though the company is growing fast, it's still small compared to the big corporations, and the pay and bonuses are lower. Despite that, we've attracted many fresh graduates who want to work here. Especially in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a lot of highly educated people like him who could easily get hired by the big firms. Joining us. We're lucky, aren't we? It's great for the company to have more talented people. The one looking so smug as she said this was a female employee who also graduated from a prestigious national university. Her name is Emily, and she's technically my junior, as I joined the company shortly after it was founded. Still, she's been speaking to me informally for a long time. Apparently, it's because I only have a high school diploma. You're right that we're lucky to have so many talented young people lately, but exactly. Even our president graduated from one of the top universities. Education equals job skills, plain and simple. I don't think that's true. What? Emily shot me a look of pure disdain at my response. It's not just because I'm a high school graduate, but I firmly believe that job skills aren't solely determined by education. Some people discover hidden talents or develop their skills after starting their career. I'm sure Mr. Walker shares this view, which is why the company hires people regardless of their education. So, I've explained to Emily countless times that the idea of only highly educated employees being competent needs to change. But once again, she sneered at me dismissively. You're still saying that? You really need to update your thinking. Ha! Look. With a smirk, Emily pointed at this month's performance board. The top performers are all highly educated members. And compared to them, you and the others from lower-tier universities, your rankings and contracts are pretty underwhelming, huh? Her mocking tone irritated me, and I couldn't help but argue back. It's only the 5th day of the month. Besides, last month's top performer was... Oh, right. It just so happened to be someone who wasn't highly educated. Hopefully, you'll get lucky like that again this month. I didn't say anything. As the company rapidly grew, we started attracting more talent from prestigious universities. While this growth propelled the company further, it also brought with it a disadvantage. That is, more employees like Emily began to distinguish between colleagues based on their academic background. They believed that those with high academic achievements were the true pillars supporting the company, and that those with lower education levels were inherently less capable than them. If I ever get married, it would have to be to someone like Mr. Walker. Young, handsome, talented, and of course an elite with a top-notch education. And compared to him, just look at you, Daniel. Aren't you embarrassed to share the same last name? You're neither young nor handsome. And on top of that, you have such a low level of education. If I were you, I'd find it unbearable. I'm used to it by now. Thanks to how often you've compared me to Mr. Walker. Oh, Daniel, you poor thing. You act tough because you're insecure about your lack of education. How sad. Ha ha. If I didn't deliver results, it was because of my low education. If I did, it was despite my low education. No matter what, Emily and her group of highly educated colleagues always made me their target. Especially me, the only high school graduate in the sales department. I've grown used to it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't sting. I'm determined to change the way they think. That resolve drives me to work harder than anyone, constantly running to meet clients, no matter how young or talented my colleagues are. Then, in the spring of the following year, hello. I'm looking forward to working with everyone. Please take care of me. A young woman bowed deeply, introducing herself nervously. The male employees whispered among themselves, stealing glances at her. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help but notice her too. She's really pretty, I thought. She still had a bit of youthful innocence, just as I'd heard she was only 22 years old. But her delicate features, tall and slender frame, and strikingly fair skin made the word beautiful suit her perfectly. She had a pure, almost ethereal presence, like the heroine of a coming-of-age drama. Her name was Ashley. She was the newest recruit assigned to the sales department. Nice to meet you, Ashley. I'm Daniel. As the oldest member of the team, I took the lead in greeting her. When I extended my right hand, Ashley hesitantly responded with a handshake. But her hand was trembling noticeably. Are you okay? Are you nervous? Yes. Despite her tall and elegant figure, she hunched over, looking down timidly. Soon, I understood the reason why. Hey, Ashley? What university did you graduate from? Emily cut into our conversation, smiling brightly. Ashley flinched and looked down even more, her shoulders trembling. She mumbled in a tiny voice. I graduated from. What? I couldn't hear you. Don't be shy, say it again, please. I only have a high school diploma. In an instant, Emily's friendly smile vanished. Excuse me? Who on earth hired a high school graduate? Hey, knock it off. I stepped in front of Ashley, shielding her from Emily, who had suddenly turned hostile. Well, if she'd at least graduated from a mid-tier university, I might have helped her out. What a shame. I'm sorry. Ashley, you have nothing to apologize for. Emily, I've told you before, it's not right to judge people by their education. It's not just me. I doubt anyone else here would want to mentor her either. Right, everyone? As Emily glanced around, her usual group of highly educated colleagues, the four who always followed her lead, smirked in agreement. The other employees, the ones from less prestigious universities whom they often mocked, looked away awkwardly, avoiding eye contact. In other words, no one was willing to take responsibility for mentoring Ashley. All right, I'll take on the responsibility of being her mentor. Oh, how perfect. You two are just perfect for each other. Emily said this, laughing heartily with her entourage. I'm sorry they made you feel bad. I'll talk to them later. When I apologized, Ashley shook her head vigorously. No. It's my fault. What? I knew there would be people here from prestigious universities. And yet, I came here as someone with only a high school diploma. Her voice trembled as she hesitantly explained. After high school, due to family circumstances, she had taken a job at a local company. As she began to resign herself to a life of doing work she didn't care for, she happened to see an advertisement for this company. For some reason, she felt an overwhelming attraction to the company and strongly thought, I want to work here. On a whim, she applied for the recruitment test, not expecting much. But she passed, and while that should have been a good thing, I'm going to quit. What? It's only your first day. But I clearly don't belong here. I don't see how I'll ever make it. Having quick judgment is an admirable trait. But this was definitely too hasty, so I hurriedly tried to persuade Ashley otherwise. By saying, even though you're a high school graduate, you passed the recruitment test just like everyone else. And you absolutely have the qualifications to work here. Is your lack of confidence really because you're insecure about being a high school graduate? She didn't say anything. Then Ashley silently nodded. Internally, I thought, this isn't good. No matter how sharp her judgment might be, it would be tough for her to succeed in sales with such low self-confidence. Clients always want a salesperson who is confident in the product they're offering. Ashley, I haven't told you this, but I'm a high school graduate too. What? Even so, there are plenty of clients who specifically request to work with me. They say Daniel's the most reliable. So I only want to talk to him. That's the result of all the hard work I've put in. For clients who initially distrusted me, because of my lack of a degree, I visited them repeatedly until they did trust me. I studied our products more than anyone else and made sure I could answer even the most detailed questions. I still get comments about my education, even now. And yeah, I've had my share of struggles, so I understand why you might feel insecure. But it's because I know hardship and failure that I can understand people's pain. I can empathize with the problems and concerns our clients have. I think that's my strength. Strength. Ashley repeated the word, and before I knew it, she had lifted her head. Her previously downcast eyes seemed to regain their light, now sparkling with determination. Maybe, just maybe, this girl had the potential to shine. With a sense of hope, I encouraged her further. How about it? Wouldn't it be fun if a high school graduate like us could show up to those elite, highly educated people? Doesn't that sound exciting? Show them up? Yeah, let's make them eat their words together. You and me? Ashley still seemed a bit hesitant, but her eyes sparkled even brighter. Up until now, she had probably given up on a lot of things due to her family situation, or because she believed her high school diploma limited her. She might have even heard someone say, despite being a high school graduate, directly to her before. Just like me. Whatever you want to do, I'll be here to support you. Don't give up before you even try, just give it a shot, and if you fail. If I fail. Ashley swallowed nervously, and I gave her a big smile. Then I'll take responsibility and apologize to everyone for you profusely. Ashley looked stunned, her eyes wide in surprise. Apologize, do you think that will be enough? I'll keep apologizing until they forgive us. And if they don't, well, we'll figure that out when the time comes. Though, I'd rather we avoid that. If possible. I'll do my best. Though I meant it as a joke. Ashley straightened up, her face now determined. She's such a serious person. If she learns to loosen up a bit, I'm sure her confidence will naturally follow. Alright then, let's officially get started. Looking forward to working with you, Ashley. Yes. This time, when I offered my hand, she shook it without hesitation. Her hand no longer trembled. I instinctively thought, this girl will definitely change how others see her someday. And before long, my prediction began to take shape. Ashley, you really saved me earlier. We were this close to losing that client to another company. No, I didn't do anything. To realize what the client really wanted at the last minute like that. It shows that you've been studying and that you're great at observing people. I just noticed there was a disconnect in the conversation. I'm sorry for butting in. Not at all. I raised my voice a little, trying to encourage her as she began to look down again. Since we started going on sales calls together, Ashley had impressed me time and time again. It's only been about a month since she joined the company, but her knowledge of IT is already on par with mine. She's sharp, with a keen eye for catching even the slightest changes in tone or facial expression from the client. And while she usually seems timid, when it counts, she has a surprising amount of initiative and courage. For someone with so little confidence, it was almost baffling how much talent she had. Your greatest strength, though, is your talent for hard work. You're a genius when it comes to effort, Ashley. A genius? No way. Not everyone can push themselves to study or to get to know their clients better. The fact that you can is a real talent. As I explained this to Ashley, I glanced sideways. Emily, who was chatting and laughing with her group, had once been a promising employee herself, full of enthusiasm when she first joined the company. But now, her performance had stagnated. While other highly educated members excelled, she had fallen behind. It was all because she started avoiding hard work, focusing more on belittling others than on improving herself. It's such a waste. If she had kept working hard, maybe she would have caught Mr. Walker's attention by now. You know what Mr. Walker likes. I almost said, someone like Ashley, but stopped myself with a cough. The last thing I needed was for her to think I meant something inappropriate and for her to suddenly decide to quit. For the sake of the company and this department, we couldn't afford to lose her. Anyway, let's keep up the good work, Ashley. Yes. From that point on, I took Ashley with me to all my client meetings and sales calls. I shared the knowledge and tips I'd accumulated over the years, while at the same time learning from her and having her support me in my work. We complemented each other perfectly, as if we had been working together for years. In no time, we began to see incredible results. Wow, Daniel and Ashley. I can't believe you landed that huge company. It was rare for Emily to speak to me, but she approached us right after we secured a major deal. Normally, she acted as if I didn't exist, saying things like, "I don't even notice high school graduates." But now, with her unusually friendly smile, I could sense a bad feeling growing, honed from years of experience. Thanks. Let's go, Ashley. Wait, but Emily was just complimenting us. No, that's not it. That was the face she made when she was about to say something sarcastic. I knew Ashley must have recognized it from her first day, too. Just as she had finally moved past it, I hesitated, wondering if I should really bring it up again. It's nice, isn't it, being a high school graduate? Expectations are so low that even when you just get lucky, people praise you. It's not that easy for us. With her face twisted into a wide smirk, Emily laughed. Her words were dripping with sarcasm as she spoke. Ha! As Ashley stood in shock, laughter erupted around us. It was Emily's entourage. At some point, they had surrounded us, smirking just like her. It wasn't luck. Ashley's success was a result of her hard work. She had thoroughly researched the client. She studied until she was practically sleep-deprived. Even during breaks, she would secretly practice her sales pitch alone. I had seen it all, being with her the whole time. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even Ashley, reduce all that effort to mere luck. It would be an insult to everything she had worked for. I spoke more sharply than usual. But Emily wasn't fazed, so she just snickered. Oh, I see. Now I get it. Get what? Why you've been dragging this rookie around everywhere? She's got the looks, doesn't she? Bet she's a hit with those older men at the client meetings. What? Her words were a slap in the face, both to me and to Ashley. I felt a surge of anger and stepped toward Emily without thinking. Take it back. You can say what you want about me, but apologize to Ashley. Aw, did I hit a nerve? No, stop belittling her. The more I raised my voice, the more Emily enjoyed it, and the laughter around us grew louder. Ashley began to tremble, lowering her head and shrinking in on herself, just like she had before she found her confidence. She had finally gained confidence and learned to face forward proudly. It was unbearable, so I glared at Emily. Oh, how scary. But that's all you've got, isn't it? Acting tough because you have nothing else, she sneered. Ashley already has plenty. She has no reason to be looked down on. Heh, the low-educated protecting the low-educated. You two really are a perfect match. With that, Emily turned and walked away, her entourage following her. Even after we were left alone, Ashley continued to tremble, her head still lowered. I'm sorry, Daniel. What? Because of me. In a small, trembling voice, Ashley apologized to me over and over. Because you're with me, even you, Daniel, are being ridiculed. She said it with frustration and regret in her voice. No, I'm the one who should apologize. As the most senior person in this department, it was my responsibility to create a safe environment for you and the others to work in. I'm sorry I couldn't do that and ended up letting you get hurt. So you have nothing to feel bad about, Ashley. There's no reason to be ashamed or to feel intimidated by people like that. You should hold your head high because your skills are real. I wasn't sure if my words had any weight, coming from someone like me. But as I added that, Ashley shook her head vigorously. That's not true. I really admire you, Daniel. You admire me? Nothing. Suddenly, Ashley lifted her head and ran off. Her cheeks were slightly flushed for some reason. After that, things became a little awkward between us. Though we continued going out on sales calls together, as soon as we returned to the office, she'd excuse herself with, I have some unfinished work to do, and quickly leave. I knew she didn't have any urgent tasks, but still. Ashley, you're not being overworked by someone, are you? If so, I can talk to them. No. It's fine. I've just been really busy lately. Really? Well, if you say so. But if it gets too much, just let me know. I have a meeting now. Excuse me. With that, she hurried off as if escaping. It's true that she's been getting more used to the work lately, and I'd even started letting her handle clients on her own as a test. So she really was busier. Maybe her distancing herself from me was a sign that she was ready to stand on her own, like a parent watching their child prepare to leave the nest. I felt a bit sentimental. But because I was so relaxed about it, I ended up leaving her alone. And because of that, I failed to notice her getting hurt again. That day, the company was holding a team-building event, with each department booking a different venue for a group dinner. The sales department's venue was a dining bar near the office. Emily had chosen the place. I let you handle this because you insisted. Everything's set, right? The food and drinks are top-notch. There's no way I'd choose a bad spot. That's not what I meant. I hinted, trying to ask if she was planning something. Whether she caught on or not, she remained completely unfazed. Whatever she was hiding, she wasn't giving away any clues. Sorry. I'll be about an hour late. Can you head over without me? Just before the end of the workday, I received a last-minute request from a client. When I put my hands together in apology, Ashley looked a little uneasy. Okay, but you'll definitely join later, right? Of course. I'll catch up with you at the venue, so just wait for me there. All right. Looking back, that was my mistake. When I finally wrapped up the work and arrived at the dining bar where the event was being held, Ashley was standing outside all alone. Ashley? When I called out to her, she quickly lifted her head, startled. The sight shocked me. Her eyes were brimming with tears, on the verge of spilling over. What happened? Did something go wrong? I knew she mostly talked to me and didn't interact much with the other colleagues. Still, recently, her hard work had moved some of them, and little by little, more people had started reaching out to her. Many had even apologized, saying things like, "I'm sorry for ignoring you because I was worried about how Emily might react." That's why I thought this company gathering would be a great opportunity for her to bond more with everyone. So, I decided to let her go ahead and join them first. Was it too uncomfortable for you? Is that why you came outside? She silently shook her head in response. Then she revealed something unbelievable. Everyone left, except for Emily and her group. What? They left? I tried calling you, Daniel, she said, prompting me to check my phone in a panic. That's when I realized, unfortunately, I had left my phone back at the office. Sorry, I left my phone behind, but why did everyone leave? What happened? Well, with her head lowered, Ashley began to explain what had really happened in a quiet, sad voice. The truth Ashley shared was, Emily and her group kicked everyone else out of the restaurant. They said anyone from a lower-tier university didn't deserve to drink in such a fancy place, and from the start, they only reserved 5 seats. What? In other words, Emily had only booked seats for herself and her 4 entourage members. The other 10 of us, including Ashley and me, weren't considered at all from the beginning. That's why she volunteered to be in charge of organizing the event. The moment I realized this, a wave of anger surged through me. And that's when it happened. Ashley, with tears in her eyes, gave me a weak smile. They told me, of course, there wasn't any room for a high school graduate woman like me, so I thought at least I'd wait and say goodbye to you. Daniel. That's why I stayed here. Ashley, wait here. Ha! I'll take you home later. Leaving those words behind, I stormed into the dining bar. There was no way I was going to let the people who made her look like that continue to enjoy their drinks. I remembered hearing somewhere that when people get truly angry, they actually become more calm. I was experiencing that firsthand. I also remembered him saying he'd join later. By the time he confronted Emily and her group, they wouldn't just be caught off guard, they'd be in for a real shock. Thinking of a certain someone, I made my way deeper into the restaurant. When I flung open the door to the private room, they were already quite drunk. They didn't even notice me standing at the entrance for a while. "Ha, waiter? It's me. This is the venue for the sales department's gathering, isn't it?" So, I came. What? Daniel? What are you doing here? Even though she was completely drunk, Emily was still the same as always. She flashed a mocking smile in my direction, waving her hand dismissively as if to shoo me away. Sorry, but there's no room for high school graduates. We didn't reserve any seats for you. Yeah, I heard that. But wasn't this supposed to be a gathering for the whole sales department? As the organizer, isn't it your responsibility to make sure everyone has a seat? Ha! Oh sure, I'll reserve seats just for the people who actually contribute to the company." The moment Emily scoffed and said those words, the private room erupted in laughter. I glanced around and saw that her entire entourage was looking at me with flushed, grinning faces. The nerve of some people. They barely do any work, but they still want to join the party? Well, I made sure to kick those kinds of freeloaders out with my authority as the organizer. Got a problem with that? People who barely work? There's no such person in our department. Everyone works hard and contributes to the company. Who exactly are you talking about? You. You're the one. You, with your low education, dragging down the company's reputation just by being here. You're a deadweight who only pretends to work. Emily pointed directly at me, hurling insults. Her entourage chimed in, shouting, "That's right, and good one," as they laughed loudly. And then, "Hey, get rid of him. He's ruining our good drinks," Emily ordered, prompting one of her entourage to stand up. With a smirk, he put his arm around my shoulder, ready to escort me out. But then, "What do you think you're doing?" A young male voice rang out, freezing the lackey in his tracks. Everyone in the room, except for me, turned toward the entrance, staring in disbelief. Why is Mr. Walker here?" Emily muttered in shock, and the color drained from her flushed face. Emily's entourage seemed to sober up instantly. They began to panic, fumbling and hastily tidying up the mess on the table, clearly confused. The young, striking man who had suddenly appeared, Mr. Walker, our company president, cast a questioning gaze over the scene. Then, he looked directly at Emily and, with a curious expression, asked her, "I heard the sales department was having a gathering here. I thought I'd drop by, but there seemed to be far fewer people than I expected. Where is everyone else?" Well, everyone had scheduling conflicts and couldn't make it. 10 people? That's a lot. Did something happen at the office? No. For Emily, Mr. Walker was the person she always gushed about, saying, "I want to marry him." He was her idol. Now, being questioned directly by him, she couldn't form a proper response, stumbling over her words and staring at the floor. With a sigh, Mr. Walker looked at her and said, "I know everything." "What?" "I spoke with Ashley outside. She told me you all kicked her out. And I overheard your conversation just now. Starting from when you said you kicked them out using your authority as the organizer. How could you just say that to my brother?" At that moment, Mr. Walker glared at Emily, his voice cold and biting. Emily and her entourage froze in place, as if time itself had stopped. "Your brother?" "That's right. Daniel here is my brother, Daniel Walker," he confirmed. "Daniel." Ashley, who had been standing just behind Mr. Walker, peeked into the room with a hesitant expression. It seemed she had already been filled in on what had happened. "You shouldn't leave a lady standing out in the cold, Daniel. I didn't want to bring her into this mess. I knew nothing these people said would be worth hearing." "True. It took all I had not to lose my temper. You've always had a short fuse. I'm impressed you kept it together." "Ah." As my brother and I exchanged casual remarks in a relaxed tone, Emily timidly spoke up. Her face had gone completely pale. It seemed she was finally starting to grasp the situation. "But, I mean, you don't even." From her incoherent mumbling, I gathered she was trying to say, "You don't even look alike." "Are you really brothers?" I explained to her. "I take after our father, while my brother takes after our mother. We look just like them, almost like clones. Probably an inconvenience for you to have to look like him, he joked. Considering our dad was such a deadbeat, yeah, I replied with a chuckle. Yeah, we've both been through a lot. Especially you, Daniel. Harvey spoke of memories that only the two of us shared, his eyes distant. We laugh about it now, but back then, we had forgotten how to smile for a long time. Both Harvey and I. Our parents got divorced when I was 7. I went with my father, while my 2-year-old brother, Harvey, was taken by our mother, each of us moving to different cities. My father was irresponsible, rarely working and certainly not caring for me. Eventually, he found a girlfriend and stopped coming home altogether. I was always hungry. Those were the words I repeated most as a child. Dressed in ragged clothes, I was looked down upon by the neighbors, who saw me as a troublemaker kid. I was mocked at school, always alone, and I blamed Harvey for it. If only I had been taken by our mother too. It wasn't fair that Harvey got all the love and lived a happy life while I suffered. I thought it was all unfair. But that perspective was flipped in the summer of my 3rd year of middle school. Wait. Harvey, is that you? Even though we hadn't seen each other since he was a baby, I recognized him instantly. He had the same beautiful, refined features as our mother, looking like he'd stepped right out of my memories. But his clothes, they were just as tattered and dirty as mine had been. I came to ask Dad for help. That's how Harvey explained why he had suddenly shown up at my door. He told me that our mother had been sick for years and hadn't been able to work properly. Because of that, they were struggling financially, barely able to afford food. I had no idea. I thought you were happy, and that I was the only one having a hard time. I thought the same. Mom always said, "I'm sure your brother is happy, and I'm sorry." My 10-year-old brother spoke without a smile, in a calm and matter-of-fact tone. The moment I saw him like that, it felt like lightning had struck me, and I made a decision. I have to help them. Leave it to me, Harvey. I'll fix this, no matter what. I left my father and moved into the small apartment where my mother and Harvey lived. While studying for my high school entrance exams, I taught Harvey the household skills I had learned myself. I got a scholarship to attend high school but spent most of those 3 years working part-time jobs. And after graduating, I started working at a local factory. It was all to send Harvey to college. You're so smart, though. It seems like such a waste. Every time I came home exhausted from my night shifts, Harvey would look at me with guilt in his eyes. But from my perspective, Harvey was the smarter one. That's why I thought it was better to invest in his education, so he could get a good job. Besides, I told you, didn't I? I'm doing this to make sure you can smile again. That's what I meant. Daniel. As long as you're still wearing that sad expression, it means I haven't kept my promise yet. And that would be uncool for me as a big brother, right? To this day, I still think you were the coolest back then. Stop it. Please forget about that already. As I buried my face in my hands, embarrassed, Harvey couldn't help but laugh. It had been a long struggle, but I had finally managed to bring my brother's smile back. By the way, our mother eventually recovered from her illness, and now the 3 of us live happily together. That's why I owe everything I have today to my brother. If it weren't for him, I never would have gone to college. And I wouldn't have thought about starting my own business. And I probably wouldn't have met any of you, either. When Harvey said this and glanced over at Emily and her group, they all flinched, their shoulders trembling in unison. When I started the company, the first person I invited was my brother, standing here. That's because he's the person I trust the most. I made the hiring process open to people without degrees because of what I saw in my brother. I realized there are plenty of capable people out there who didn't go to college for one reason or another. Although I've since learned the opposite is also true. Ah! She turned pale, stammering as she realized the meaning behind his words. Then, why isn't he in a higher position? Couldn't you make him a vice president or something with just one word? I turned it down, I replied. I wanted to stay in the role of a regular employee. What? Emily looked completely bewildered. But I had spent years working among adults and had seen the worst of them. The higher people climbed, the more they seemed to forget their past struggles and treated those beneath them with arrogance. I promised myself I wouldn't become like that. So, whenever Harvey offered me a position, I turned it down, believing I wasn't ready to take on that responsibility without being corrupted by the power. Besides, there's still so much I want to learn from being on the front lines. That's why I'm turning down the offer to become the head of the sales department, too. Oh, come on. I thought you'd finally accept. If that's the case, I'll take the position. Emily suddenly jumped into the conversation, raising her hand with enthusiasm. You, as head of the sales department? Yes, Mr. Walker. With all due respect, Daniel is only your brother. He hasn't delivered remarkable results. And it's hard to say he's contributed significantly to the company. In contrast, I'm far more suited for the role. Sure, I've had a bit of a slump lately, but my overall ability is still far superior. Harvey listened to her self-promotion in silence until she finished. Harvey let out a deep, long sigh and then muttered in an exasperated tone, "You don't understand anything." What? You remember the TV interview that brought attention to the company? The one that made us stand out? Of course. It's what made me want to work for you, Mr. Walker. It was my brother here who encouraged me to do that interview. What? Harvey wasn't just speaking to Emily but also addressing her entourage. He explained that in every important moment for the company, he had always sought my advice. My insight had never been wrong, always providing sharp advice that reflected the reality of the workplace. Each time, it helped the company overcome various crises. And I believe that in business, the most important thing is trust. You build that trust by carefully completing each task, earning the confidence of clients, and connecting that trust to future work. In that regard, no one surpasses my brother. He's so thorough that some people might think he's too slow. Sure, his contract numbers aren't growing quickly. And he's never at the top in terms of performance. If you look only at the numbers, his contribution might seem low, but I deeply respect Daniel. Unable to hold back any longer, Ashley spoke up from behind Harvey. When I work with him, I completely understand what Mr. Walker means. Even the most difficult clients, after speaking with Daniel, always look relieved. That's what it means to earn trust. Daniel contributes to the company by gaining the trust of our clients. So, to say he's unfit for a leadership position, that's just not true. Despite her trembling legs, Ashley stood up for me with all her strength. Harvey patted her on the shoulder, offering her a gentle smile. Thank you for saying what I wanted to. What she said is exactly right. I hate the idea of measuring someone's worth solely by numbers. There are other perspectives to consider. For instance, quietly covering for a colleague's mistake and saving a deal that was about to fall through. I value that kind of kindness and quick thinking as well. Hearing that, suddenly, Emily's expression changed, as if Harvey's words had struck a nerve, and she realized exactly what he was referring to. Wait, you mean the client you angered, the one who refused to talk to you anymore? It was my brother who went to them personally and convinced them to continue the deal. She wasn't the only one. I'm sure many of you remember jobs that suddenly started going smoothly or problems that resolved themselves without explanation. As Harvey looked around the room, addressing each person, Emily's entourage began to pale one by one. Eventually, one of them, with a look of resignation, muttered, "Yes. I'm sorry. Even though Daniel helped me, I never acknowledged it until now." "Hey. Me too. I'm sorry." "What?" Ignoring Emily's protests, her entourage continued apologizing to me, each bowing their heads in turn. "It's not just me you owe an apology to, you know that, right?" "Yes." Next, the four of them turned to Ashley, bowing their heads and apologizing. Seeing this, Emily's face flushed red as she trembled uncontrollably, and finally, unable to contain her anger, she pushed past us and stormed out of the private room. "Ah! I can't stand this. You traitors, just wait until we're back at the office." No one tried to stop her, which only seemed to fuel her anger. With heavy footsteps, she stormed out of the restaurant, her entire body expressing her fury. Then, right after that, the colleagues who had been kicked out earlier returned to the restaurant. They explained, "We were worried about Ashley after all. It looks like this is going to be a great team from now on," Harvey said with a satisfied smile. I nodded deeply. "Yeah. I hope we can all work together to help the company grow." "Well then, we should get to know each other better." Seeing how crowded the space was, Harvey suggested another venue where we could all go to celebrate together. Then, Harvey generously offered to cover the costs himself and suggested restarting the gathering from scratch. "Harvey, aren't you coming? If I'm there, everyone will feel awkward, right? It's the sales department's gathering, after all. You all should just go and enjoy yourselves." Watching his retreating figure, I felt a wave of bittersweet emotion. Harvey had always been smart and dependable, but to me, he was still the little brother I needed to protect. Now, though, he was the one looking out for me. Seeing him so mature, capable of such thoughtful gestures, I was proud yet a little sad at the same time. I guess it's time for me to let go of my brother a bit. "Daniel. Everyone's already headed to the new venue. Let's go." Ashley waved to me, and I waved back, saying, "I'll be right there." The only thing that still worried me was Harvey's tendency to focus solely on work. I hoped he'd start thinking about his own happiness soon and find someone to stand by his side. Someone kind and sincere, like Ashley. Wait, what? For a moment, I felt a slight pang in my chest. I brushed it off as nothing and hurried over to join Ashley. We moved to a new venue, and this time, the gathering began with everyone smiling and enjoying the relaxed, friendly atmosphere. The night went by happily and without a hitch. The next day, however, things took an unexpected turn. When Emily approached me, her attitude was completely different from the day before. "Daniel, I've reflected on everything, and from now on, I'm going to take my work seriously." I was speechless at her sudden transformation. Suspecting that losing her loyal entourage had made her panic, then, before I could fully process it, she dropped a bombshell. "And I'll be sure to show respect to you as well. After all, you'll be my future brother-in-law." What? I realized I still love Mr. Walker. After talking to him up close last night, I reaffirmed my feelings. Now, I'm going to make sure he sees me as a capable woman and start actively pursuing him. So, make sure you keep Mr. Walker updated on all my achievements. Oh, and feel free to recommend me for the head of sales too. That'll add to my status as the future president's wife." I was speechless. Regardless of her intentions, the desire to turn over a new leaf is admirable. Working hard with a serious mindset is definitely a good thing. As a senior employee, I should encourage my juniors' motivation. Although, it would have been nice to hear this a bit sooner. "Sorry, but it's too late, Emily." "Ha?" With a confused look on her face, I reluctantly delivered the truth. "I've already told Mr. Walker everything about your behavior." "Everything?" "Yes, everything. And based on that, Mr. Walker has decided that no matter how much you change, he will never consider dating you. In short, I'll never be your brother-in-law, and you'll never be the president's wife." "No way." "Also, Mr. Walker isn't into flashy women like you. Especially those who focus only on appearances and lack substance. Even if they have impressive academic credentials." That last remark had a bit of a spiteful tone to it. But considering everything that had happened, I figured this much payback was justified. "Anyway, you'll be getting a transfer order soon." "A transfer? You remember the company we acquired recently? They're short-staffed, and Mr. Walker's been trying to decide who to send over. Looks like he found a highly motivated candidate." "You mean a demotion?" "I'll strongly recommend you to Mr. Walker." When I told her that, Emily collapsed to her knees on the spot. Leaving her behind, I made my way to Harvey's office, where he was waiting. Harvey has always preferred modest, gentle women. Someone like Ashley. Wait, it's happening again. I felt a faint pain in my chest, just like yesterday. Maybe I should go to the hospital, I thought as I walked down the hallway. But then, all of a sudden, a sharp pain stabbed through my chest. Oh, they really do look good together, after all. It was because I saw Ashley and Harvey chatting and laughing in the hallway. I finally realized. Whenever my chest hurt, I was always picturing Ashley with Harvey. "Hey, Daniel." "Daniel." Both of them smiled when they noticed me. As expected, Harvey looked perfect next to Ashley. They were a handsome pair, close in age. I forced a smile, ignoring the ache in my chest. "You two seem to have gotten pretty close. I mean, the atmosphere between you is really nice. I just happened to run into Mr. Walker earlier and wanted to thank him for yesterday." "Oh, I see." I had intended to be supportive and encourage the two of them. But Ashley's smile disappeared, and for some reason, she looked down. "Daniel." For some reason, even Harvey let out a sigh as if he was disappointed in me. And then, in the next moment, Harvey suddenly put his arm around Ashley's shoulder. "Mr. Walker. Ashley, I think I might like you. How about dinner tonight?" Harvey whispered in her ear as he leaned closer to Ashley. At that moment, I found myself rushing toward them. Even though I had decided to support them, I couldn't help but think, I don't want this. But before I could intervene, Ashley acted first. She shoved Harvey away with all her strength. "Please stop. I like Daniel." "Ha? Me?" Ashley snapped back to reality at my stunned murmur. And then, her face quickly turned bright red. I mean, that just slipped out. That's how it is, Daniel." While Ashley was flustered and I was frozen in place, Harvey remained completely calm. As if he already knew how Ashley felt. "I'll leave you two to it." The third wheel will be on his way." He flashed a mischievous grin and walked off. What does he mean by "that's how it is"? When I turned my gaze back to Ashley, she looked like she was about to burst into tears. "Are you okay?" "I like you, Daniel, not Harvey, but you. I've liked you for a long time." "Wait, what?" "So, that's why she's been acting so distant lately?" Even someone as clueless as me about women's feelings had to finally accept it when faced with a direct confession. "But I'm 10 years older than you." "That doesn't matter. And I'm not exactly good looking." "Daniel, you're the coolest. To me, you're better than anyone, better than Mr. Walker." "Come on, now, that's definitely going too far." "Then, you're the best in the world." "Daniel, you're amazing." Being praised as the best in the world by the woman I cared about. What man wouldn't be moved? "Please go out with me, Daniel." Without hesitation, I nodded at her words. Ashley smiled brightly, and in that moment, she was undeniably the most beautiful I'd ever seen her. After that, the atmosphere in the sales department changed dramatically. The prejudice and division based on education disappeared completely. A new mindset emerged: let's compete based on our results. Like a real sales team. Everyone started to become aware of each other in a positive way. People even began to gradually help each other with their weaknesses. And the once tense department was turning into a fantastic team that rivaled any other. Emily, on the other hand, was transferred to a distant subsidiary and has been struggling with the unfamiliar environment and tasks. Despite her impressive academic background, her coworkers seemed to respond with, "So what?" She's reluctantly started to show signs of working steadily. I hope she eventually realizes that building trust slowly and consistently is the surest path to earning respect. By the way, since then, Ashley and I have been happily dating. Let's give it our best today. Stay motivated, but take each task one step at a time. Ashley, who has steadily built up her confidence through her accomplishments, now works with a vibrant energy that almost makes her glow. She's now my partner both at work and in life, and each day, she becomes a bigger part of my world. She constantly reassures me that she feels the same way, which fills me with happiness every time. In today's society, where education is often overly emphasized, there are still many who believe it's acceptable to look down on others based on their academic background. But to me, that's a wasted mindset. People often have strengths or hidden talents that go beyond their academic credentials, sometimes even beyond their own awareness. In this transformed workplace, I plan to continue sharing these important lessons with those around me. Hey, Edward. I forgot my pen at the office. Go back and get it. That was my boss, Thomas. And to top it off, we're overseas. When we arrived at the hotel, there wasn't even a room reserved for me. Everyone else on this business trip with us burst into laughter at Thomas's comment. I let out a deep sigh. Ugh. This is too much. This is straight up harassment. Thinking that, I walked away. Should I just go back to Japan? The thought crossed my mind, but my name is Edward. I'm 30 years old. I'm actually in charge of tomorrow's business meeting. I was fed up with Thomas's constant bullying. So, I took a cab to the airport and made a call. There was no flight back to Japan. I ended up calling my uncle who lives in the US for the first time in ages. My aunt answered the phone. Hello? Oh, Auntie? It's Edward. This is sudden, but can I come over? I'll be there in about 2 hours. Soon after, I arrived at my uncle's house. Ed. Long time no see. Did something happen? My aunt asked with concern. I explained the situation and decided to stay at my uncle's place for the night. That evening, when my uncle came home from work, we reminisced about the old days. Even though I'm 30 now, I found myself reflecting on my life a bit. I grew up with my dad, who ran a small factory, and my mom, who worked as an office clerk there. My maternal grandmother lived nearby, all alone. I would wait at her house when my parents worked late. She also picked me up and dropped me off at daycare, and as an only child, I was really close to her. When I started elementary school, my parents were strict about my studies, so I went to a nearby cram school and an English class. There, I often saw Madeline, a friend from daycare. We lived close to each other. At school, all the kids talked about video games. Neither Madeline nor I had one. We were in the same class, but we didn't quite fit in with the others, so we often felt like outsiders. One day after school, Madeline mumbled, "I wish I could play video games too." I felt the same way. One day, I begged my grandma, "Grandma, I really want a video game. I'll study hard, I promise." Being soft-hearted, she whispered, "Let's keep this between us," and bought me a game console. It came with 2 controllers. I was so excited, I could hardly contain myself. Madeline lived in a pretty big house, but her parents were strict about studying too, so I secretly invited her over to my grandma's after school. Madeline told her parents she was studying with friends, then came over. We would finish our homework first, then enjoy playing games together. But we kept it a secret from everyone at school. If our parents found out, we'd be in big trouble. Madeline and I were close friends until 3rd grade. But around that time, my mother passed away from illness. I broke down in tears. I cried day after day, as if I was using up a lifetime's worth of tears. I cried until I had no tears left. I even stopped going to school for a while. Then, my grandmother moved in with us to help take care of my father and handle household chores. I was in such shock that I couldn't speak. At the funeral, my uncle, my mother's younger brother, was also sobbing uncontrollably. Looking back, my grandmother must have been devastated too, having lost her daughter. My father kept a strong face as we held a small funeral, and my grandmother held back her tears. I ended up not attending school for an entire year. I also stopped going to cram school and stayed shut in my room. Later on, my uncle and aunt were transferred to a company in the US, and my uncle invited me to come to America. So, I flew to the US. My aunt and uncle, who had no children of their own, treated me with great care in America. As my environment completely changed, I gradually adjusted to life overseas. Both my aunt and uncle helped me with my studies at my American school. I went on to graduate from middle school and high school in the US, and I worked hard enough to get into a prestigious American university. There was also a man named Joseph, my uncle's best friend, who often visited their house since I was in elementary school. He always called me Ed and treated me kindly. I learned a lot from Joe, especially when it came to studying. After graduating from college, my grandmother's health deteriorated, so I returned to Japan. Following my uncle's advice, I joined my current company. My background was kept a secret, known only to President Owens and the HR department. At first, I was assigned to the General Affairs department. In the company cafeteria, I saw a sales department office worker who felt strangely familiar. But I couldn't quite remember who she was. The company wasn't a big one at the time, but it was a real estate firm. While working in the General Affairs department, I earned my real estate broker's license. Back in middle school, my uncle had bought me a computer, and I loved it. When the internet became widespread, I communicated with many people online. I was comfortable conversing in both English and Japanese. In the General Affairs Department, I mainly handled organizing documents. Since I got off work on time, I could also keep an eye on my grandmother. However, her condition started to change. Since I had Wednesdays off, I took her to the hospital. As I suspected, my grandmother had dementia. And it was a severe case. My father and I had no choice but to put her in a care facility. A while later, my father remarried. His new wife took over the household chores. I rented a small one-room apartment near the office and started living on my own. One day, at the company's year-end party, the sales department office worker I had been curious about came up to me. "Edward, don't you remember me?" "Ha! I'm Madeline." "It's me, Madeline." "Wait, you're Madeline from elementary school?" "Yes." "Isn't it nostalgic?" I was shocked. I never would have guessed that the Madeline who lived nearby when we were kids was now standing in front of me. She had become quite beautiful, and with her makeup, I hadn't recognized her at all. After that, Madeline quietly slipped me a small note and returned to her seat. The note had Madeline's contact information written on it. The next evening, I sent her a quick message, just saying, "Good job today." Madeline replied, asking, "How have you been since then? Want to grab a meal sometime?" So, I agreed. We ended up having dinner at a family restaurant. I told Madeline about how I had gone overseas and about my time in college, and I asked her to keep it a secret from the other employees. Madeline had apparently graduated from a prestigious private middle and high school, then went on to Tokyo University before getting a job. We both decided to keep our backgrounds a secret from others. Madeline, too, was living alone at the time, and after that, we started going out for meals together more often. At the time, we were both 24. I remained in the General Affairs Department for a while, but one day, President Owens called me in. "Edward, we're short on sales staff right now. Would you be willing to transfer to the sales department?" "Mr. Owens, I'm not really good at sales." "Take your time, Edward. You're talented, and I believe you'll get the hang of it little by little." "Thank you. I'll give it a try." And so, I was transferred to the sales department the following week. I greeted Thomas and the other sales staff as I sat down at my new desk. Madeline, the office worker for the sales department, smiled warmly. At first, I shadowed my senior colleagues, learning the ropes by greeting clients and picking up on their sales talk. During my time as a student in America, I had become more outgoing, enjoying English and making many friends. But after returning to Japan, I reverted to being introverted, and sales made me incredibly anxious. I confided in Madeline about my struggles, and she sent me encouraging messages. I started working in sales at the age of 28, but I struggled to land contracts. One day, Thomas asked, "Edward, where did you graduate from?" "Oh, it wasn't anything special." "Figures. You millennials. You need to set more appointments and hustle harder." "Yes, Thomas." "Understood." Thomas was around 40 years old. And that's when my nightmare began. No matter the weather, whether freezing or scorching, I was running around chasing sales leads. But I still couldn't close any deals. "Hey! Useless Edward. Just sit down and organize the documents today." "Yes, Thomas." "Understood." As I said that, Thomas handed me a mountain of paperwork. It was so heavy I nearly tripped. The other sales guys burst out laughing. I sat at my desk, facing the computer, starting to sort through the documents. There was no way I could finish this in one day. Thomas, when do you need these documents completed by? Useless Edward, this will probably take you ages. You've got 3 days. And if you can't finish, stay late but don't expect overtime pay. I understand. I replied in a low voice. Could I really finish this in 3 days? The documents needed to be prepared for each sales rep, including contract creation and client details, all meticulously typed without errors. It seemed like a new residential development had started in a somewhat distant area. The sales team was busy running around for negotiations with the construction company there. Once they secured a contract, I'd verify it and pass it along to Thomas. Balancing that with my document preparation duties was overwhelming. The company had started small, but it was gradually growing since I joined. Even I was starting to feel disappointed in my lack of sales ability. When the workday ended, everyone went home. But then, Madeline showed up at the office with lunch and some coffee. Edward, I brought you some food. Let's eat together, and I'll help you organize the documents. Thanks, Madeline. I really don't think I'm cut out for sales. But it means a lot that you're here. Thomas has always been like that, moody and short-tempered. Even when you were in the general affairs department, new sales employees were yelled at, made to do paperwork, and some ended up quitting. With your background, you could have easily joined a bigger company. Why did you choose this one? Oh, it was through my uncle's recommendation. I did consider working for an international company, but at that time, my grandmother's health was declining. She had taken care of me, so I was worried about her. That's why I asked to be placed in the general affairs department, where there was no overtime. I figured there'd be a lot of client dinners and sales. I see. So, President Owens and your uncle know each other? Yeah, apparently they were classmates. Wow, just like us. Well, we were only together from daycare through elementary school, but still. I was so happy back then when we could play video games at your grandmother's house. Those were good times. Yeah, they really were. You've grown up so much, Madeline, I didn't recognize you at all. How did you even remember me? Well, you look the same. You haven't changed since back then. Yeah, I do get told I look young for my age. We chatted and laughed while sharing the food she brought. These documents are actually supposed to be my job as the office clerk. Leave it to me. Thanks. Madeline took some of the paperwork and sat at her desk to help me. But by then, it was already 10 p.m. Madeline, it's getting late. You should head home soon, it's not safe. You're right. Are you going to keep working? I'll stay for a little longer, but I'll be heading out soon. Don't overdo it. See you tomorrow. I thanked her and let her leave first. I figured I could push through a bit longer. After using some eye drops, I decided to call it a night around 1 a.m. Since my apartment was close to the office, I walked home slowly. I just took a quick shower and went to bed for a few hours. The next morning, I got to work early and resumed the document processing. It still felt like there was no end in sight. I had been typing away at the computer nonstop since morning. But thanks to Madeline's help, I had made significant progress. However, a senior colleague handed me another stack of documents. At the 10 a.m. break, Madeline brewed coffee for everyone. Hey, Edward. At least make yourself useful and brew the coffee. You can't do anything else, so start pulling your weight. Oh, I'm sorry. Madeline had a puzzled look on her face. The other senior colleagues were smirking. Just as I was about to take my lunch break. Edward, do you really think you have time to take a break? Are the documents going to be done? I'll be right back. Saying that, I quickly ate a sandwich and returned to the office. Well, it's not like eating more would help, I'd probably just get sleepy anyway. Once again, I worked overtime into the evening. Madeline brought lunch again today and came to help me. I clocked out but continued working. Madeline arrived shortly after. Madeline, you came again? Thanks so much. No problem. It's not like I have anyone waiting for me at home anyway. But, as I was going through these documents, I realized that a lot of them aren't even necessary right now. This is just Thomas messing with you. Yeah, I figured as much. But with my poor sales record, I don't have much of a choice. Thomas is such a jerk. Madeline fumed, visibly angry. Her expression reminded me of when we were kids, playing games, and she'd get upset whenever I beat her. Her smile was cute, but her angry face had its own charm too. I had plenty of female friends in America, but they were just friends, none of them were ever my girlfriend. Lately, though, I've started to feel myself being drawn to Madeline. Despite being so beautiful, she told me she wasn't seeing anyone special. That night, we finished work around 9 p.m., and I walked Madeline to the station. It seemed like I would be able to submit everything by the third day. The next day, I took the initiative to make coffee for everyone at 10 a.m. Madeline came into the break room. How's it going? Will you finish in time? I'll make the coffee, you just need to carry it. Thanks. I should be able to finish everything by noon, thanks to your help. If I don't deliver the coffee myself, Thomas will probably yell at me again. When I said that to Madeline, she simply made the coffee and returned to the office. I carried the coffee to everyone's desks. Thomas scowled but didn't say anything. I went back to my desk. Just then, the phone rang. It was an internal call from President Owens. Edward, could you come to my office for a moment? Yes, Mr. Owens. I'll be right there. I hung up the phone. Thomas, I've been called to Mr. Owens's office. I'll be back soon. Knowing you, it's probably a demotion. Go get scolded properly. Ignoring him, I headed to the president's office, where I was invited to sit on the couch. Edward, how's the sales work going? Mr. Owens, I'm really sorry. I haven't been doing well at all. Right now, I'm helping Thomas with document sorting. I see. Sorry to hear that. We're about to enter negotiations with some overseas clients, and I'd like you to handle the materials. We don't have many employees proficient in English. I understand. And that was the end of our conversation. I went back to the office and finished Thomas's documents by noon, handing them over to him. What's this? So, it wasn't a demotion after all? You finally finished the documents, huh? Useless people sure take their time. Thomas sneered as he looked through the papers. The other employees gave me smug smiles. A little later, President Owens entered the office. Mr. Owens. Good afternoon. All the employees stood up to greet him. I did the same and greeted him as well. Thomas, I have some materials I'd like Edward to handle. Would that be all right? Sure. Edward's no good at sales anyway. With that, President Owens handed me the documents. I took them and looked through them. They were materials about an American resort located in Japan. I started drafting the proposal in English. Then, I compiled the information in Japanese. Since English is my strong suit, I finished the materials quickly. I brought the finished documents to the president's office, where President Owens reviewed them for about 30 minutes. As expected of you, Edward. Please wait here for a moment. After President Owens said that, I sat on the sofa and waited. Then, he made a phone call to someone. Ah, Joseph, thanks as always. The documents are ready. Let me hand the phone to Edward for a moment. Feeling a bit puzzled, I took the phone from President Owens. Hello, this is Edward. Hey, Ed. It's me, Joseph, your uncle's friend. What? Joe? Wow, it's been so long. I'm really surprised. You sound well, Ed. That makes me happy. I was the one who asked Mr. Owens to handle this resort project. Your uncle is doing great, too. I'd love to sit down and have a proper chat with you. Could you come to the US? Joe, so this project was from you? Of course, I'd be happy to. I'll definitely make the trip. Thanks, Ed. I'd like you to bring your boss and senior colleagues with you. I'll review the documents later and pass the details to Mr. Owens. Yes, I understand. I responded, still surprised, and handed the phone back to President Owens. Then, President Owens and Joseph exchanged a few more words before ending the call. Afterward, President Owens said, Joseph Howard, the CEO, was actually my classmate back in college. What? Joseph is a CEO? That's surprising. Yes, he is. It's going to be a big project, so if a business trip to the US is arranged, I'll make sure to let Thomas know. I'm counting on you. Mr. Owens. I understand. This is a pretty major deal. Please do your best. I will do my utmost. Still in shock from the unexpected conversation with Joe, I bowed to President Owens and left his office. The overseas business trip was scheduled for the following week. Along with Thomas, a few senior colleagues, and myself, we headed to the US. I hear this is a big deal. Edward, make sure you don't try to show off, Thomas said on the plane. We arrived at the hotel in the US. However, my room was the only one missing. Thomas, it seems like I don't have a room. Your room? Oh, I forgot. Ha ha. By the way, I left my pen at the office. Why don't you go back and get it? I stood there, stunned. As I mentioned earlier, I thought, this harassment is really over the top. And, saying, understood. As I turned to leave, everyone around me burst into laughter. Hiding my frustration, I turned my back on them and called my uncle. I then took a 2-hour trip from the airport to my uncle's house. My uncle was furious. Ed, it's been a while. To think they'd send you back during an important negotiation with Joseph. I'll let him know what's going on. My uncle explained everything to Joe, the CEO. The next day, Thomas went to meet with Joe Howard. I had already contacted President Owens. He, too, was furious. Actually, Edward, I've been informed by Madeline about the harassment you've been facing from Thomas. What? Madeline is my niece, you see. She's my sister's daughter. Wait, really? Yes. She's told me a lot about you, Edward. I'll make sure Joseph gets the full details. Please hold tight for now. Sorry about this, Mr. Owens. I understand. I was once again taken aback. I decided to wait at my uncle's house. The meeting was scheduled for 1 p.m. the next day. My uncle and aunt were overjoyed to see me again after so long and prepared a feast for dinner. Ed, it seems your father has remarried. I know you were a great help to my mother. Thank you for all that you did for her. Uncle, it was nothing. I loved Grandma, and though she's in a care facility now, she's still doing well. Ed, thank you. My uncle said this, his eyes slightly teary. I hadn't seen my father in a long time, but I still visited Grandma from time to time. However, each visit became more painful as she no longer remembered who I was. It seemed dementia had cruelly taken away even our shared memories. But she always greeted me with a smile whenever I visited. As I reflected on my conversation with President Owens, I also remembered how Madeline had smiled warmly as she saw me off before I left for the U.S. I couldn't believe Madeline was actually President Owens's niece. I sent a message to Madeline. When I invited her out for a meal after I returned to Japan, she replied with a smiley face. That night, I stayed at my uncle's house. The next morning, I left early to avoid running into Thomas and headed to meet with Joe Howard, the CEO. Mr. Howard, thank you for meeting with me today. Ed. I'm glad you came. You've really grown up. Could you wait in the room at the back for a bit? I'm so happy to see you. Yes, I'll wait there. It seemed like Howard was planning to observe Thomas and the others before making any decisions. I hid in the back room, feeling a bit excited as I waited for Thomas and the senior colleagues who had mocked me to arrive. After that, I listened closely and heard what seemed to be an American man entering the room. Howard and the man were chatting in fluent English, laughing and enjoying their conversation. Then, Thomas and the 3 senior colleagues who had laughed at me arrived. Thomas handed over his business card and greeted Howard with a deep bow. Wait, aren't you missing someone? Oh, that guy? He's useless, so we sent him back to Japan. Useless? Edward? He's the reason we're even doing this deal. Thomas, was it? In that case, we'll cancel this $100 million contract. What? $100 million? Please, Mr. Howard, wait. At that moment, my phone started ringing, with Thomas calling me. I opened the door and stepped out of the back room. Thomas, the useless Edward is right here. What? You? I thought you went back to Japan to get my pen? Why would I go all the way back to Japan for a single pen? And I didn't even have a room to stay in. Oh, that. But, Edward, what's this about $100 million? Thomas, I had no idea about the amount either. Then why are you even here? Because this is an important deal. I said to Thomas, as I politely greeted the white client standing next to Howard. Thomas? What's this about a pen? Howard asked, and Thomas, trembling, responded nervously. Oh, that was just a misunderstanding. Edward, it seems Thomas isn't up to the task. Thomas, I did hear from both Edward and President Owens that Edward struggled with sales in Japan. But he's not useless. Now, can you give today's presentation in English? Well, I'm not that good with English. Ed, please take care of it. Both my uncle and Howard's CEO have always called me Ed. Thomas, surprised, muttered Ed. "Thomas, let me tell you something. I've known Edward since he was a child. He studied hard in America and graduated from Harvard." "Harvard?" "Yes. So, he's far from useless." "Ed, take it away." Ignoring the stunned faces of Thomas and the others, I opened my laptop and gave the presentation in fluent English. The client's eyes lit up with excitement, clearly impressed. Afterward, we chatted in native English about the best things Japan had to offer. Then, I shook hands firmly with the client, and we shared a hug. I also hugged Howard's CEO. The $100 million deal was a success. After that, Mr. Howard turned to Thomas and the others and said, "I have no use for any of you. To think you treated Edward like he was worthless. Leave immediately." Thomas and the other three lowered their heads in defeat and left the room, shoulders slumped. I thanked Mr. Howard deeply, and he invited me to join him and the client for a celebratory meal. We strengthened our connection and then I returned to Japan. Back at the office, President Owens was furious with Thomas for the way he treated me and issued a demotion order. I was officially appointed as the head of the sales department by President Owens. As Thomas slumped and left the office, the senior colleagues who had laughed at me turned pale. Only Madeline greeted me with a smile. There was still one more thing I needed to do. With determination, I invited Madeline to a high-end restaurant and proposed to her. Madeline looked at the diamond ring I gave her, and with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face, she accepted my proposal. Our wedding was a grand celebration, with both Joe Howard and my uncle in attendance. During the event, President Owens announced that I was to be the future president of the company. And I was met with resounding applause from the many guests. Thomas, unhappy with his rural reassignment, chose to resign. The senior colleagues who had mocked me apologized for their behavior. The atmosphere at the company became peaceful, and with Madeline as my wife, I made a firm commitment to protect and lead the company together. "What? Are you okay?" I rushed over to the woman collapsed in front of the store, forgetting myself in the process. With my parents' shop on the verge of closing, I shouldn't have had the time or energy to help anyone. But I just couldn't turn a blind eye. "Hang in there." The woman was dressed in tattered clothes and had passed out, like someone who was homeless. Just as I was about to call an ambulance, she stopped me. "Wait. There's no need for an ambulance." In a weak voice, she refused to be taken to the hospital. This mysterious woman, clearly burdened by some untold story, reappeared in front of me a month later. She looked like a completely different person, coming back to repay the favor. And her presence would truly lift me from the depths of despair. Something still feels off. I muttered to myself with a frown while chewing on a freshly made hamburger patty. "My name is Aaron, 35 years old. I'm the owner of Simpson's Bento, a shop located just past the office district and around a corner. I think I'm getting closer, but maybe I should add a bit more salt next time." I've been mumbling to myself for a while now, trying to improve one of the menu items, our hamburger bento. For days, I've been experimenting with different meats and seasonings, testing one variation after another, muttering, "No, that's not it. And this still isn't right. I'm so sick of hamburgers at this point. And all of this? It's because of. It's your fault, Dad. This bento shop used to be run by my parents. My father was the quiet, old-fashioned type, responsible for cooking. My mother was bright and cheerful, handling customer service. Though they were complete opposites, their bento, filled with simple homemade dishes and plain white rice, became popular. The food wasn't fancy, nor did it leave customers speechless with its flavor. But the shop thrived because, in the end, it tasted good. Why don't you help out at the store? One New Year's Day, my father suddenly asked me that. At the time, I had no intention of taking over the family business. I worked at a company nearby. I'm too busy with work right now, so I can't, I had said at the time, turning him down. Looking back, I wonder if that was some kind of warning sign. Not long after, my parents passed away in an accident. Dad, if you wanted me to take over, you could have at least left some notes. I thought about closing the shop entirely at one point. But in the end, I quit my corporate job and took over the family business. Our family lived on the second floor of the bento shop, and when I came home from school as a kid, my mom would always give me leftover side dishes, saying, "Have this as a snack." My father, who usually looked grumpy, seemed to enjoy himself when he was in the kitchen. I loved watching him work. That's when I realized how important this place was to me, too. But soon after, I ran into a problem. The issue was, my father had left no recipes behind. I feel like the taste of the bento has changed. I liked it better the way it was before. Comments like that reached my ears from the kitchen, and they made me flinch. I'd practiced cooking countless times, and though I had little experience beyond making meals for myself, I thought I'd managed to produce a decent bento. But replicating the exact taste? Without a recipe, that was impossible. I've been running the shop for about a year now, and though I've tried everything I can think of, the flavor is still a little different from what my father used to make. And that subtle difference is something our loyal customers can sense. As more and more regular customers stopped coming, sales plummeted. Despite all my efforts, the business was failing fast. That day, we didn't even sell half the bento boxes I had planned for. I was left with a lot of unsold ingredients as the clock hit 6 p.m., signaling closing time. Maybe I'll give it a bit more effort, and if it still doesn't work, I'll just give up. I was thinking about this as I stepped outside to close the shutters when... What? I froze, startled, letting out a loud gasp. The reason? There was someone collapsed right in front of the store. Are you okay? Sprawled out on the ground with arms and legs stretched out was a figure, most likely a woman based on her long hair. Her hair was tangled and messy, like it hadn't been washed in days. She was wearing a thin coat and sneakers, both filthy and tattered, as if she hadn't changed or cleaned her clothes in quite some time. And, to be honest, as I got closer, there was a faint but unpleasant odor. Is she homeless? It was rare to see someone homeless around here, but I did remember a time when the trash bins in the back had been rummaged through. We throw out a lot of waste daily, so maybe someone had taken an interest. Back then, the cleanup had been such a hassle that, to be honest, I thought, what a nuisance. Are you okay? I'm calling an ambulance right now, hang in there. Ignoring someone collapsed in front of me was a completely different matter. I shook the woman's shoulder gently, calling out to her several times from up close. Just as I pulled out my phone to call an ambulance. Wait. Wait, there's no need for an ambulance. Her weak voice stopped me. The woman tried to push herself up, her arms and legs straining with effort. But halfway through, she collapsed back onto the ground, completely exhausted. At the same time, a loud rumble came from her stomach. Are you hungry? Yes. After a brief, hesitant pause, the woman responded. I helped her sit up and then made a suggestion. Why don't you come inside and rest for a bit? Oh, but I'm dressed like this. I don't want to dirty your shop. It's fine, I was going to clean anyway. Besides, Looking at her clothes, and the fact that she didn't want an ambulance, I figured she probably couldn't afford medical bills. She also seemed too young to be homeless. Everyone has their reasons, but this woman definitely seemed like she had a complicated story. And then, if you see someone in need, help them. You never know, it might bring something good your way later. It was almost like I could hear my mom's old saying, "I'm Aaron, the owner of this place. I'm sorry, I can't." "That's okay. Please, come inside, don't worry." "Thank you so much." As I led her, hesitantly following behind me into the shop, I thought to myself, helping out a mysterious woman who can't even share her name? Feels like something out of a movie. That's what I was thinking as I led the woman inside. In front of the counter, there's a bench that's been there since my parents' time. It was placed there for customers to sit and wait when orders pile up. Lately, the bench had rarely seen any use, but I sat the woman down on it. "Do you have any allergies or foods you don't like?" No, not particularly." "Got it. Just wait a moment." I headed into the kitchen, and about 3 minutes later, I returned with a bento. What I prepared was a bento with grilled sausages and a rolled omelette as the main dishes. It's our quickest to serve and, surprisingly, one of our most popular items, the nostalgic bento. For now, please have this. If it's not enough, you can order anything else from the menu. But, hesitating, the woman didn't immediately take the bento. However, her stomach had been growling nonstop. Her eyes were glued to the bento, making it all too obvious. "Let's think about everything else after you eat. It's hard to do anything on an empty stomach." "Yes." "Then, thank you for the food." With that, she quickly bowed her head, snatched the bento from me, and began devouring it hungrily. "Maybe you should slow down a bit. You might choke." Delicious." "Sorry? It's so delicious." As she kept repeating how delicious it was, she finished the bento in no time. Then she went on to polish off a seaweed bento, fried chicken bento, and stir-fried vegetable bento, one after another. By the time night had fallen, she finally put her hands together and said, "Thank you for the meal. You ate quite a lot. Are you sure your stomach is okay?" I was taken aback by the stack of empty bento boxes in front of her. Suddenly, the woman exclaimed, "Oh," and started rummaging through her dirty skirt pockets. I really hate to say this after eating so much, but yes? Well, right now. I only have this." She held out her hand apologetically, showing me a single dime. "I promise I'll pay you back for everything later." I had no intention of freeloading, but it was just so delicious that I couldn't stop. "I'm really sorry. Was it really that good?" "Ha? Yes, it was amazing." "I see." I gently placed the dime back in her hand and said, "Don't worry about the payment." It was the first time since I had taken over the shop that someone had said those words to me. Not the taste has changed or it was better before, but simply, it was delicious. That simple word made me so happy. I didn't even care about the payment anymore. After all, I was the one who offered it. "It's fine, really. Thank you so much, Aaron. And, while I'm at it, can I ask for one more favor?" "What is it?" Can I have a hamburger bento as well?" Fidgeting, the woman pointed to the menu on the wall, her voice barely audible. "It's really delicious, especially the hamburger." "Thank you. You sure can eat, though." Even after eating all those bentos, she continued to dig into the hamburger bento with a smile, as if it were her first meal. Despite her dirty and ragged appearance from head to toe, the more I observed her, the more something seemed strangely out of place. That beautiful face, hidden beneath her disheveled hair, was the reason for my strange feeling. She had long eyelashes, big eyes, and a sharp, straight nose. If she cleaned up, I was sure her skin would be fair and smooth too. How could such a young, beautiful woman end up homeless? As I found myself staring at her face, that's when it happened. Ah! The woman suddenly stopped eating mid-bite. A single tear slipped quietly down her cheek. "Wait, are you okay?" I asked, startled. "No. I'm sorry. I just remembered something from the past," she said, without wiping away her tears, and then quickly finished the rest of the bento. Then, she bowed deeply towards me, saying, "Thank you for the meal. It was truly delicious. I won't be able to come back for a while, but I will never forget you, Aaron. Thank you so much." You're welcome. Goodbye." With a final smile, the woman left the store. She left behind a strangely meaningful parting comment, "I'll definitely be back." About a month passed after that incident. One morning, while I was casually watching TV at home, a news segment came on about a new stage production that had recently started and was a huge success. Wow! Lauren, huh? What caught my attention was a woman waving at the camera. She was the actress playing the homeless heroine in the production. Her skin was so pale and flawless that the word translucent seemed perfect to describe it. With her large, captivating eyes, she was a beauty that even I, someone who wasn't interested in celebrities, found striking. She's only 24? That's impressive for someone so young. Apparently, she had been a child star on TV. Now, she was focusing on stage work and had finally landed her long-awaited lead role in this production. The announcer went on to explain how she was not only admired for her beauty but also gaining attention for her exceptional acting skills, making her someone to watch in the future. I listened, impressed by the praise. And now, here's a sneak peek of the hit stage production. As those words were spoken, footage from the stage production appeared on the TV. When I saw it, my jaw dropped and I couldn't close my mouth. What? This can't be. The woman on the screen, performing on stage, was the same homeless woman I had helped a month ago. For the rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate on work, completely dazed by the revelation. What on earth is going on? There was no mistaking it. The woman running around the stage, shouting her lines with such intensity, was the same person who had collapsed in front of my store? Her tattered clothes, even the dirt on her face, were exactly as I'd seen them that day. And of course, her beauty beneath it all. Which meant, that woman, she's Lauren? It was probably a blessing that hardly any customers came in that day. I was completely out of it, staring off into space or suddenly shouting out, acting like a suspicious person. Well, no one's coming in today anyway. It was a bit early, but I decided I might as well close the shop. Just as I was about to step outside to lower the shutters, it happened. "Excuse me, are you still open?" The door suddenly opened, and a woman peeked into the shop. "Oh, yes, we're still open." But as I answered, the impression I got from the woman was suspicious. She wore a black cap pulled down low enough to hide her eyes, along with a black tracksuit zipped up to her neck. On top of that, her entire face was covered with a black mask, making her completely dressed in black. Anyone would think she looked suspicious. In fact, to be blunt, she looked like a suspect. She definitely didn't look like someone about to eat a bento. Can I take your order? Yes, could I get about 50 bentos, please? 50. An unexpected request from an already suspicious person. I couldn't help but shout in shock, and the woman in front of me started waving her hands frantically. No, no. Even I couldn't eat 50 bentos. Wait, even I? But I could probably handle 20. No, actually, if it's your bento, Aaron, maybe even 30. Have we met before? Not remembering her at all, I asked cautiously. The woman paused, then slowly took off her mask, revealing a smile on her perfectly shaped lips. Next, she removed her cap. Wah! I was so shocked that I stumbled backward, hitting my back hard against the counter. Because the woman smiling in front of me was the beautiful actress I had seen on TV this morning. It was Lauren. It's been a while, Aaron. I wanted to thank you again for that time. It's been a while? Wait, you're really? Just like I promised, I've come back. This time with my wallet. As she said that, she flashed a slightly embarrassed smile. Despite the many emotions running through me, I found myself captivated by her smile. Once I finally calmed down a bit, Lauren revealed that homeless appearance was for the sake of a role. At first, she was just walking around the city in character, but gradually, she felt that wasn't enough. Things escalated, and she even started skipping meals. With intense rehearsals added on top, it eventually led to her collapse in front of my shop. I've always had a big appetite, so it was really hard. Maybe my body unconsciously knew there was some delicious bento here. And that's why I collapsed in front of your shop. I see. Is something wrong? When she tilted her head in curiosity, I confessed. As much as I appreciated her telling me how delicious the food was, it made me think about how much better my father's bento would have been. But your bento was really delicious, she said. That's probably just because you were starving. My bentos aren't that good, the fact they're not selling proves it. Though I had confidence in my customer service, being a former salesman, I still couldn't compare to my mother. I had let the shop, which held so many memories of my parents, fall into decline. Maybe I wasn't cut out to take over after all. As I recalled the harsh reality, I sighed even in front of Lauren. And then, it happened. The hamburger bento. Ha! Lauren suddenly shouted, catching me off guard. She blushed and smiled sheepishly. Sorry, just remembering that taste made me blurt it out. Could I have a hamburger bento, please? Oh, sure, just give me a moment. I couldn't help but think, does that really fit with the flow of our conversation? But I've heard that talented people tend to operate outside the norms of common sense. I went into the kitchen and started preparing the hamburger bento she ordered. About 10 minutes later. Here you go, sorry for the wait. Wow! Lauren's eyes lit up as she looked at the bento I brought her. She immediately sat down on the bench and said, "Thank you for the food," as she eagerly took a bite of the freshly made hamburger. You know, I'm actually not that hungry today. Oh, really? Yes, but it's still incredibly delicious. As she said that, Lauren smiled warmly at me. I'd like to order 50 bentos. I want to bring them as a gift for everyone working with me on the play. After quickly finishing the bento, Lauren looked at me and repeated her request. Are you sure? 50 bentos. I've never done that many before, but I don't think it's impossible. Are you sure you want them from my shop? I absolutely want them from you. All of your bentos are delicious, and they have such a comforting flavor. I want to share them with my fellow cast members so we can power through the rest of the production." Her words were so genuine. A comforting flavor. "The taste might have changed since your father's time, but I think that's natural. Just like how the same role and lines feel different when played by different actors. It's not about who's better, it's about each person's unique touch." Unique touch. That's why I love your bentos, Aaron. They're delicious and have that gentle, comforting flavor. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way. So please, have confidence in yourself. Her words made me realize how wrong I'd been. No matter how much I chased after my father's cooking, I could never perfectly recreate it. What was more important than that was offering bentos I could confidently call delicious to my customers. "Your order is accepted." "Really?" "Yes. I'll make some bentos that will lift everyone's spirits." Seeing Lauren's eyes light up, I smiled and gave her a big nod in return. A few days later, I delivered all 50 bentos, made with everything I had, to the theater where Lauren was performing. The response was beyond anything I could have imagined, and several people from the production even came to the shop to buy more, saying, "It was so delicious." And then, "Excuse me, I'd like to discuss something." One day, I received such a phone call at the shop. The woman on the line was an employee from a modeling agency. She had heard about the bentos through a connection with the theater group and became interested. "Could you create a bento with traditional Japanese side dishes, as low-calorie as possible, but still delicious and satisfying in small portions?" That sounds like quite the challenge. She explained that many of the models struggled with maintaining their figures. Although they'd heard great things about my bentos and wanted to try them, they were worried about the calories. She felt bad for them and wanted to find a way to let them enjoy the food. "I see. And how many would you need?" "We'll need 100 in total, please." 100! It was the largest order I'd ever received. After much trial and error, I finally created a new bento that was low-calorie, tasty, and satisfying. The delivery went smoothly, and the bentos were a hit. Soon, even more large orders started coming in from other entertainment agencies. The shop, which had been so quiet, suddenly became so busy that there was barely any time to rest. "Hello, this is Simpson Bento. I've brought 10 special bentos for delivery." Even during those hectic days, there was one place I always made sure to visit personally. It was a small entertainment agency located on the second floor of a nondescript building. "Thanks for your hard work. Just leave them over there." This was Lauren's personal agency. The president of the agency was none other than Lauren's mother, Hannah. Whenever I delivered the bentos, she would always say, "Leave them there," without even looking up from her computer. Lauren's face resembled her mother's, but their overall vibe was completely different. Her mother was beautiful but gave off a cold, slightly intimidating impression. "Is there something else?" "No, sorry, I'll be going now." Even the slightest delay in leaving would prompt a sharp remark from her. Just as Lauren had mentioned once, my mother is always strict. But still, thank you very much. I look forward to your next order. No matter what, I'll keep delivering bentos here. It's my way of thanking Lauren, the person who gave me the chance to bring my shop back to life. Then one day, she appeared at the shop again, despite her busy schedule. "Aaron, I have a favor to ask," she said suddenly. "Could you teach me how to cook?" "Wait, cooking? You want me to teach you?" "Yes. You're the only one who can." As she said that, Lauren leaned closer over the counter, her face inches away from mine. Please." With those serious eyes, this stunning woman, who was currently the center of attention everywhere, leaned in close to me. My heart suddenly started racing and didn't calm down for a while. Why did she suddenly want to learn how to cook? Could it be for another role preparation? Considering her dedication to her roles, I immediately agreed to help. After all, I had witnessed firsthand the passion she put into her work during her preparation for the homeless role. If she was going to give another amazing performance. And besides, if it's for someone who had helped me, teaching her how to cook seemed like a small favor. To be honest, you looked like a real homeless person back then. It's incredible how far you have to go for a role. Acting must be tough, I remarked. No, that time was special. My entire life was riding on it, she said with a wry smile. Your life? Yes. Lauren then opened up about the reason she had thrown herself so fully into that role. Over a decade ago, she had been a child actress who drew a lot of attention. Touted as a child prodigy and the talent of a decade, she was showered with praise from adults around her. But my time in the spotlight didn't last long. As soon as another child star came along, people quickly lost interest in me. The jobs dwindled. And by the time I graduated middle school, no one even remembered me. Even the adults who once praised her turned their backs, and she was let go from her agency as if being kicked out. For the next 10 years, she survived by taking nameless bit parts, unable to find any real success as an actress. Then, one day, out of nowhere, an opportunity came knocking. A famous stage director cast me as the lead in his play. It was for that homeless role. Honestly, I was panicking because my work had completely dried up by then, and I thought, this is it. If I could nail this role, I could keep working as an actress. So I was determined to do whatever it took to perfect that character. Even her notoriously strict agent, President Smith, had encouraged her, saying, "Do your best." So, Lauren pushed herself to the point of collapsing from hunger. Her efforts paid off, and the play was a massive success. Now, her agency is flooded with offers. I'm so glad to hear that, but wow, the entertainment industry sounds rough. From the outside, it all just looks glamorous. Yeah. At that moment, Lauren's expression softened into something more wistful. Aaron, your cooking is delicious, gentle, and nostalgic. Nostalgic? Actually, I don't want to learn how to cook for a role. Wait, really? Yes. I want to cook for my mother. Lauren looked straight at me as she spoke. Before I started acting, and even just after I began, we didn't have much money. But my mother always found ways to make sure I was full. Cooking delicious meals just for me. Your bentos remind me of my mother's cooking. It tastes similar in a way. She sounds like a wonderful mother. Yes, she was a really wonderful mother. Lauren's face took on a sad expression again as she softly murmured. The reason she had cried while eating the bento was because it brought back memories of that time. Even though they were poor, those days in their single-parent household were filled with happiness. Remembering how different things were now had made her sad. Are you not happy now? No. My mother has changed. Changed? I know she worked so hard for me, sacrificed everything. But the moment I found success as a child actress, and we suddenly had a lot of money, my mother changed. Even if we'd stayed poor, I would have been happy as long as I had my kind mother with me. A tear fell onto Lauren's hand as she spoke. In that moment, I understood. She wanted to learn to cook because she hoped that by sharing a meal, she could bring back the kind, gentle mother she once knew. If they could eat the dishes they used to enjoy together, maybe her mother would remember those times too. Lauren, can you tell me what dishes your mother used to make? Ha! Suddenly, I came up with a plan. When I shared it with Lauren, her eyes widened in surprise. From the next day on, she started coming to the shop whenever she could find time in her busy schedule. However, about a month after I started teaching Lauren how to cook, something unexpected happened. When I went to deliver her bento as usual, President Smith, who rarely looked up, raised her head and stared directly at me. Is there something wrong? We will no longer be ordering bentos from you, Aaron. What? I froze in shock, and she stood up, walking toward me, her sharp gaze fixed on my face. When she reached me, she glared intensely. I know what's been going on. My daughter has been coming to your shop nearly every day for the past month. I don't know what you're doing with her, but I won't allow her to go there again. Wait, please. Lauren. It's a problem. Now that her career is finally taking off, I can't afford to have her embroiled in some scandal. Scandal? You need to cut ties with my daughter immediately. If you need money, I'm willing to pay, though it won't be much. Please, wait. President Smith had completely misunderstood the situation between me and Lauren. I tried to explain that nothing improper was going on between us, but she cut me off before I could get far. Don't act like you didn't want to use my daughter to make connections in the entertainment industry. What? Isn't it great? Your shop is thriving now, thanks to her. You've used her enough, haven't you? Any more involvement will only hurt Lauren's career as an actress. If her future is ruined because of you, I will never forgive you. She saw me as an obstacle to Lauren. She believed I could ruin her career. The weight of those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I understand. But I have one last request. More money? No. Could you try this? What? With a puzzled expression on her face, President Smith watched as I pulled out the top bento from the stack I had brought. This one stood out because its wrapping was a different color from the others. Because it was a special bento. This is the bento I made with Lauren this morning. With Lauren. Yes. It's filled with the dishes that hold memories between you and her. If you eat it, I'm sure you'll understand Lauren's feelings. If possible, please share it with her. Do you really think I'll believe that? Once you look inside, you'll understand. With that, I'll take my leave. I bowed deeply and left President Smith's office, a place I knew I would never come back to. And I prepared myself to never see Lauren again after tomorrow. The next day, after closing the shop, as usual, after finishing her work, Lauren came to the shop. She seemed unusually nervous and cautiously asked me, "You gave my mom the bento, right?" "I couldn't come home yesterday because of filming." "Yes, I delivered it." "Really?" "Yes." Seeing her eyes sparkle with excitement, I just couldn't tell her the truth. President Smith hadn't shown the slightest hint of happiness when she received the bento. After that, we cooked together as usual. As we sat down to eat the finished meal, I finally spoke up. "This will be the last time." "What? You've gotten so good, there's nothing left for me to teach you." And since I've delivered the bento to President Smith, this chapter is complete. But I'm still far from good enough. And one meal isn't going to bring my mom back to how she was. I need to keep. I cut Lauren off, trying to push her away. I walked to the door and opened it wide. "Please leave. And don't come back." Why, Aaron? Her voice trembled, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. Then, I've fallen in love with you. Is it wrong to want to stay by your side? Tears streamed down her cheeks, falling onto the floor. She confessed that in the harsh world of show business, being by my side was the only place she felt truly at peace, where she could genuinely laugh. But even with such an unexpected confession, my heart remained unmoved. Please go. I can't return your feelings, Lauren. Aaron. I grabbed her arm and forced her toward the door. She struggled for a moment, her face a mess of tears, but in the end, she stepped outside with me. Once outside, she hung her head, as if she had finally given up. Is this really the end? Yes. I don't want to see you again, Lauren. I see. Lauren suddenly looked up with a sad smile. Then, please don't forget how I feel, she said, suddenly wrapping her arms around me in a tight embrace. Lauren, it's the last time. Can I at least do this much? What should I do? Should I just tell her the truth right now? Why wouldn't I be able to see Lauren anymore? And what about my own feelings? Because of that hesitation, I couldn't bring myself to push Lauren away when she hugged me. And that hesitation gave someone else a chance. The chance for a reporter who had been lurking nearby to snap a picture of us. By the time I heard the shutter click, it was too late. A young man with a camera rushed over, grinning, and began bombarding Lauren with questions as she hastily pulled away from me. We're from Weekly Cando. You're the actress Lauren, right? Is this man your boyfriend? No, he's not. Then why were you two hugging? You're an only child, right? Raised by your mother, President Smith, as a single parent? Ah. Stop. I quickly stepped in front of Lauren to shield her from the reporter's aggressive questioning. The man just grinned, as if he'd struck gold with his scoop, and kept snapping photos. Stop it. There's nothing going on between us. We're just strangers. Do you think the people who see these pictures will think the same thing? What? The reporter waved his camera in front of me with a smug grin, proudly showing off the photos he'd taken. Then, without giving me a chance to stop him, he ran off, phone in hand, probably contacting his editor. Aaron. I tried to comfort Lauren, who looked worried, saying, I'm sure everything will be fine. I had no real reason to believe that, but it was the only thing I could say. However, it's my mom. Hello? Lauren. Come to the office immediately. And bring Aaron with you. President Smith's angry voice came blaring through Lauren's phone. It was clear that things were far from fine. A reporter from a magazine contacted me. They said if I want them to drop the story about your relationship, I'll need to pay them $100,000. $100,000. I told you to stay away from Lauren. But you didn't listen. As soon as we arrived at the office, President Smith lashed out at me. This is all your fault. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to protect Lauren's reputation? What do you have to say for yourself? Or are you going to pay the $100,000 yourself? I'm sorry. Stop it, Mom. This isn't Aaron's fault, it's mine. He was only trying to push me away for my own good, but I couldn't control my feelings. I don't care about your feelings. What matters now is getting that article pulled. Otherwise, it'll ruin your career. Ignoring her daughter's plea, President Smith began dialing someone on her phone, presumably trying to stop the reporter. But I reached out and grabbed her hand. What are you doing? You didn't eat the bento Lauren made for you yesterday, did you? The bento? What are you talking about? Let go. If you had eaten it, you wouldn't be saying that Lauren's feelings don't matter. For a moment, President Smith froze, a look of realization crossing her face. Lauren, looking worried, asked her mother, "You didn't eat the bento, did you? Even you're saying this? Don't you understand the situation? Did you throw it away?" Of course not. Shouting in frustration, President Smith stood up from her chair with force. Lauren's expression softened with relief. Seeing this as my chance, I decided to tell President Smith the truth. "Miss Smith, Lauren has only been coming to me to learn how to cook." Cooking? Yes. She wanted to recreate the meals you both shared in the past and enjoy them with you now. Isn't that right, Lauren? Yes. Mom, what happened to the bento? If you didn't throw it away, where is it? President Smith stared intently at Lauren's face, remaining silent for a while. Then, without a word, she suddenly walked toward the corner of the office and retrieved a familiar box from the refrigerator before returning to us. "May I open it?" she asked. Lauren nodded softly. As she carefully unwrapped the paper and opened the lid of the bento box, her expression changed. That's the octopus-shaped fish cake, made with discounted fish cake because we couldn't afford real sausages. And that's the veggie stuffed omelet, full of scraps to stretch the ingredients. And then Lauren began explaining each dish lovingly. Every dish was a creative, delicious meal her mother had prepared, filled with love, despite their limited finances, for a daughter who loved to eat. Lauren remembered each recipe perfectly, down to the ingredients and the flavors. All I had really taught her was how to use the kitchen tools safely. "Let's eat together, Mom. It's really delicious. I've tasted it, and it's exactly how you used to make it. Lauren, I remember everything. After you divorced Dad and raised me on your own. How you found the money for my expensive acting lessons because I wanted to perform. And how you've been by my side ever since I started as a child actress. I'm so grateful for everything. But I like the old you more, the kind, warm mom. I'd rather share meals with you than keep acting or make more money. Even when we were poor, those days were so much happier for me. That's how I really feel." President Smith stared into the bento, still silent. Finally, she took the chopsticks Lauren handed her and slowly lifted the omelet to her mouth. "Oh, see? It's good, isn't it?" Lauren smiled as her mother's eyes widened in surprise. President Smith began to eat the rest of the dishes one by one, while Lauren and I quietly watched. "I told you to keep auditioning until you landed a role. Did you hate that?" "No. I wanted to keep trying because I wanted to succeed, even though it was hard, and I cried alone sometimes. I didn't know." Tears began to stream down her face. Even as the tears fell, her chopsticks didn't stop moving. When she had finished the bento, she finally whispered, "It was delicious. I'm sorry. I thought I was doing everything for you, but I never really understood how you felt." "Mom." "Aaron, thank you for helping me realize my mistake, and I'm sorry for all the terrible things I said to you." "Ms. Smith. From me as well. Thank you so much, Aaron." With matching smiles, they both bowed their heads to me in unison. When they looked up, they exchanged a warm, joyful smile, having finally reconciled. Thus, they were able to return to the loving mother-daughter relationship they once had. After that, Lauren used the success of her homeless role as a stepping stone to make a major comeback as an actress. Now, she's everywhere on TV dramas, variety shows, and even commercials. There isn't a day where you don't see her on screen. And as for the scandalous article, it never came out. Whatever strings President Smith pulled, I'll never know. I'm so glad, Lauren. You're shining brighter than ever. I never used to care much for TV, but I make sure to record every program she's in, making bento boxes until I'm completely exhausted. Then unwinding at night by watching the shows I've recorded. This has become my way of relaxing lately. Lauren, more beautiful and radiant than ever, throws herself into every project with all her might. Watching her gives me a deep sense of happiness. And yet, it always reminds me that we live in completely different worlds. I'm glad Lauren kept her promise. She hasn't come back to the shop. Lauren and I made a new promise after she reconciled with President Smith. We wanted to avoid any more pictures being taken that could interfere with her career. 3 months have passed, and she hasn't appeared once. And that's how it should be. I'll just keep watching her from a distance, through the TV screen. At least, that's what I thought. Until Lauren suddenly contacted me, asking to meet. This place is exclusive to members, so no tabloid reporters can get in. Lauren said with a smile as we reunited at a bar she'd chosen. She's absolutely stunning. Seeing her all dressed up, I couldn't help but stand there, mesmerized. Since then, I've had many conversations with my mom. We argued a bit, but we made up properly. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. My mom now only lets me do the work I want to. She says, do what you love and go at your own pace. Just don't overwork yourself. And make sure we have one meal together each day. She's even adjusting my schedule for that. I see. It's all thanks to you, Aaron. Really, thank you so much. As she said this, Lauren gently rested her head on my shoulder. The sudden closeness made my heart skip a beat. Lauren, you must be drunk. Maybe, but that's why I forgot. I forgot you turned me down. Lauren, smiling from up close, leaned in even more. And then, I love you, Aaron. Lauren, even if you reject me again, I won't give up. As an actress, determination is everything. Ha ha. I had a feeling she would confess to me over and over again. But only if I were to reject her. Unfortunately for her, I came here today having already made up my mind. I feel the same way. I've missed you so much, Lauren. Aaron. Lauren's face lit up like a spotlight had been cast on her. In that moment, I was overwhelmed with affection. This time, I pulled her into a tight embrace. After that, Lauren held a press conference and publicly announced our relationship. When a reporter asked her why she chose to reveal it, Lauren confidently smiled and replied, "Neither I nor my partner have done anything wrong. There's no reason to keep it a secret, so I decided, with my mom's advice, to go public." I later learned that President Smith had stalled the negotiations with the blackmailing reporter until Lauren's feelings could come to fruition. She had kept saying, "Soon, I'll give you an even bigger story. If it doesn't make waves, I'll pay you $200,000 or whatever it takes." And she wasn't lying. Lauren's bold announcement about our relationship caused a media frenzy for a while. The reporter lost his scoop and didn't get his $100,000, likely feeling quite bitter about it now. As for me, I've been busier than ever. Thanks to Lauren mentioning in the press conference that the man I'm seeing runs a bento shop, my place was quickly identified. At first, curious customers flooded in, but after trying the bento, they became regulars, coming back 2-3 times or more. Now, there's a line outside my shop every day, and Simpson Bento has become a bustling success. Aaron, I'll have one healthy Japanese-style bento. Lauren, welcome. Lauren has also become a regular. With both of us so busy, meeting at the shop has become our substitute for dates. But she says she enjoys it. And I feel the same way. Are you sure you don't want a hamburger bento? I've gained a little weight recently, so I'm trying to cut calories for a while. I don't think you've gained at all. Besides, a little weight might expand your range of roles. True. The real reason is that I love watching her enjoy her favorite foods. But since Lauren smiled, I figured a little white lie wouldn't hurt. By the way, I'm recommending our new healthy tofu hamburger bento. Sounds delicious. I'll take 5. Got it. You're going to end up getting a job as a competitive eater at this rate. Competitive eating, huh? I could do that. Maybe I'll offer myself up for a show. If I do, make sure to cheer me on. Lauren's bright smile made me laugh, and I responded, of course. After all, I'm her boyfriend and her biggest fan. I silently speak to my parents in heaven, telling them that I've managed to protect the shop they left behind. I was able to do it, just as they would have wanted. I was able to do this by letting go of the idea that I had to recreate my father's exact flavors and instead finding a new path forward for the business. The key to overcoming challenges often lies in unexpected places. Through a chance encounter, Lauren and I were able to solve the issues we had both been carrying for so long. But unless you genuinely want to solve a problem, you won't recognize the key when you find it. That's why I'll continue to face many challenges. And with the help of the person I love, I plan to overcome each one, step by step.